Name: heart of ambition, corruption, pride, domination. Appearance: a heart that continues to beat eternally even after being removed from the body. Approaching it recklessly will let you hear the whispers of demons, arrogantly demanding you to reveal your own ambitions. And the stronger the ambition hidden within a person, the deeper the roots of pride in their heart, making them more easily attract its attention and temptation. Ability: demon's heart, self-abnormality amplification, sovereign domination. Cost: open your heart, inviting it to witness your ambition and pride. File: the heart of a near-God level great demon, once heavily damaged and plunged into a long-term slumber. During this time, it was sent as a rare exhibit to an underground auction due to its trait of continuing to beat even after leaving the body. It was auctioned off by a member of the Lionheart family and nourished by the deep ambition within his younger brother, causing it to awaken once more. It devoured the brother's heart, replacing it, and has continued to this day. Evaluation: an anomalous object with virtually no combat capability. But the nobler the user's status and the greater the power they hold, the more terrifying its effects become. A mere member of the old nobility, soon to be abandoned by time, cannot manifest its strength. If it falls into the hands of a true power figure, or even a king from the 12 kingdoms, it will make this world feel fear. Contamination value: 11, 3.3 Bobby Lane, 2.3 Leon Lane. Your contamination value has increased. Current contamination value: 2.3. To make this world feel fear. Looking at the undoubtedly highest evaluation among the anomalous objects he had encountered so far, Leon finally had some concept of the Black Goat's level during its heyday. Although the Black Goat's heart was also severely damaged, it always remained in a wild state, unlike the Yang Jiao, which fell into the hands of the director and had even its authority destroyed in the past. It still basically maintained its original hierarchy, and its powers were quite frightening. For those dominated targets, it possessed near absolute control over life and death. Pretty good. What are you doing? Still not shaken off the shock from being used, he once again felt the activation from the other party, even stronger than imagined, and couldn't help but panic. The young man reached out desperately to grab Leon's arm, struggling with all his might while shouting desperately, "What are you doing? What exactly are you doing?" Without answering his question, Leon, his clothes soaked with blood, his body bearing pain like being cut by 1,000 knives, slowly closed his eyes. Using the strengthening effect of "I am the demon," he pushed the heart of ambition to its current limit. Buzz! An invisible wave of souls rapidly spread with the two as the center, and the entire Ryan Manor instantly quieted down. Nobles, officials, servants, butlers, gardeners, everyone within the manipulation range of the heart of ambition was dragged into that invisible pyramid. Standing on the second layer of the pyramid, Leon looked at the hundreds of thousands of purple-black souls around him and felt the decay far worse than mud around him. He finally made up his mind. Bang! 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 With a series of collisions between flesh and hard objects from his sequential naming, fireworks of flesh and ironstone bloomed within Ryan Manor. Climbing tall buildings and leaping off, sprinting to collide with rocks, diving into the nearest scenic lake. A multitude of rotten souls full of greed and political plotting were extinguishing at an average rate of 2 per second. Stop it! Watching Leon's rampant slaughter, the soul of Bobby Lane, tossed outside the pyramid, couldn't help but roar in fury. Do you not know what you are doing? You and the Purification Bureau have agreements with the kingdoms. Random killing of ordinary people is absolutely forbidden. Do you know what will happen to you if you do this? What did I do? Carefully identifying the evil flooded souls below and extinguishing those utterly decayed flames one by one, Leon tilted his head slightly, delivering his slightly surprised response. Wasn't this all you're doing? You! Having obliterated yet another rotted soul, in this pyramid without any other spectators, Leon, having shaken free of all restraints, turned to calmly narrate. During this investigation mission, I unexpectedly suffered an ambush from you and was trapped in this manner. To pry into the secrets of the Purification Bureau, you threatened me with the lives of the Lane family members. If I didn't reveal the Bureau's secrets, you'd kill one person every second. Unfortunately, I'm just a freshly promoted small employee and know very little about the Bureau's intelligence, with no way to answer. So these people could only die in vain. You're talking nonsense. Unexpectedly, this bucket of water splashed back on his own head, and Bobby Lane's soul was instantly filled with rage as he shouted at Leon. You can't cover this up. So many people died suddenly. The Purification Bureau will definitely investigate you. By then. Investigate how? Leon continued his work calmly as he responded with utter serenity. Did you get something wrong? The one who merged with the anomalous object is you, not me. Could I have used your anomalous object to kill your clansmen? As for other more special investigation methods, I only acted within this pyramid, and you seem to be the sole witness, right? And once everything is over, I won't waste your filthy soul either. It's prepared to be fully digested by the Black Goat. So how are they going to investigate? Investigate you, who will have even your soul decomposed? Or investigate these people who were entirely controlled by you and know nothing at all? Actually, it's not entirely secure. After some frowning thought, Leon's soul calmly stated, if the Bureau truly values this greatly, willing to use objects involving causality, or mighty anomalous objects that reverse time, they might indeed reveal what I did, but are you worth it? You, damn it. Realizing he truly couldn't do anything to Leon and forced to watch helplessly as everything he had got destroyed bit by bit, Bobby Lane's soul couldn't help but howl in resentment. You madman! You damn madman! Madman! Upon hearing his words, Leon's movements paused for a moment as he recalled himself prior to joining the Purification Bureau, ready to charge into the Department of Road Administration with a knife. Seems like I might be a bit. After forcefully extinguishing the last irredeemable flame, observing the other souls with somewhat warm colors, Leon stopped his hand and exited the pyramid, reaching out to seize Bobby Lane's throat with seriousness. If I were indeed crazy, it must have just occurred on the 28th of last month. Do you have any other last words? Bobby Lane walked away peacefully. Despite the expression of rage on his face and the eyes brimming with hatred and reluctance, there was a sense of satisfaction and happiness that emanated from deep within. At least, that was what Leon thought. Before he could utter his last words, Leon forcibly extracted the heart of ambition, finally eliminating the Duke of Lionheart's primary heir. Surrounded by the fallen members of the Lane family, utterly exhausted, Leon plopped down and casually rested his hand on the Black Goat's head. Damn it! I fought so hard, drenched in blood, only for this thing to reap the biggest benefits. Watching the soul fragments surge in his soul vision, almost forming a river, Leon rubbed the Black Goat's forehead silently. Name: War Cornerstone, Corruption, Wrath War. Appearance. Ability: Demon Horns, Malice Amplification, Endless Blood Battle. Cost: Recognized, can be used without any cost. File. Evaluation: Thanks to your careful nurturing, the Repaired Authority has made this anomalous object a terrifying weapon of war once again. If you bring it into a large-scale war, you will have a temporary undying body and inexhaustible stamina until one side completely collapses, ending the battle. Contamination value: 8, 2.5. Your contamination value increased. Current contamination value is 2.5. Asterisk not bad. Although it used to be a little piece of junk, it absorbed nearly 200 sinful souls in one shot and repaired the broken authority. At least it finally looks a bit like a great demon, but... Asterisk. Stop it! After delivering a smack to the back of the Black Goat's head, knocking it to the ground as it indulged in absorbing souls, Leon scolded. Your limit is 8 points. If you keep absorbing, that's all you'll get. Don't overdo it. You! Enraged by the hit on the back of its head, the Black Goat turned to curse, but upon seeing the fierce soul fire in Leon, it inexplicably lost its momentum and argued, "Though we can't continue to get stronger, we can still stock up. Maybe one day." "Stock up for what? Stop now." Glaring at it in annoyance, Leon explained, "So many people died this time. The Bureau might send someone down to investigate. If they come and see you full of soul fragments, I won't be able to talk my way out of it." "Ah?" The black goat looked baffled and muttered, "What do you need to explain? Wasn't it all you—" "Ouch." After giving it a slap on the head, Leon emphasized seriously, "This was all Bobby Lane, trying to extract information about the Purification Bureau from me. He went insane. I wanted to stop him, but was powerless. In the end, I could only—" "What does that expression mean?" "Nothing." After hearing Leon's story, the black goat responded speechlessly, "If he did everything, why did he die instead of you?" "Because of you." Smacking the black goat's head, Leon explained without a hint of emotion, "Bobby Lane's spree of slaughter allowed you to absorb a large number of souls, repairing the authority the director shattered, hence significantly boosting your power. Afterward, relying on the Holy Spirit pendant, I forcefully approached him, using you to suppress his heart's domination ability, letting me kill him in one strike." Hearing this, the black goat retorted, "But since when can I suppress its authority of domination? Your explanation is too far-fetched. Whether you have the ability isn't important, what matters is you said it." Having long prepared an excuse, Leon flashed a smile reminiscent of the red-haired director, squinting as he replied, "No one knows Yang Jiao or Yang Xian's body better than you. So, if you say you can do it, then it surely can. Then why did only villains die? Because of internal family power struggles threatening Bobby Lane's position. Or maybe because the more evil targets are harder to control. He seized the chance to eliminate dissidents. Or perhaps due to your interference and protection, he couldn't target good people." After listing 3 options, Leon seriously reminded, "Don't be so rigid. You have the say now, and how things went should be determined by whatever you decide." Thinking of that, there actually is something that needs handling. Looking at the heart of ambition, forcibly extracted and temporarily placed on Bobby Lane's corpse, Leon frowned and inquired, "What's your heart situation now? With Bobby Lane's soul consumed, does it still possess self-awareness? It should. Still have it?" Hearing Leon's inquiry, the black goat seemed unsure and said, "This is the first time I've been split into 7 parts. Not sure about the details. Maybe you should ask it?" "Why did I even bother asking you?" Casting a wordless glance at the black goat, and relying on the "I am the demon," Leon reached out to grasp the heart of ambition, about to speak when a high-pitched male voice, resonating with a resemblance to Bobby Lane by 6 parts, echoed in his ear. "Release your filthy hand." After hurling a word of mild anger, the heart of ambition coldly hummed through the soul. "I overheard your conversation. So have you come to beg me to keep it a secret? It's not a request, it's a demand, though you can refuse." Gently touching the Holy Spirit pendant on his chest, Leon replied with a calm demeanor, "But if you refuse, I will use this to weaken you to about the same strength as the cornerstone, and then have it erase your awareness to prevent you from leaking information to the Purification Bureau." "You dare!" Infuriated by Leon's threat, the heart of ambition flared up with anger, thumping violently and demanding, "If not for your entertaining slaughter, a lackey of the Purification Bureau like you isn't even fit to converse with me, especially with your vulgar and weak heart. Seems there's no room for negotiation." As Leon listened to the furious thundering at his ear, he shook his head and grasped the Holy Spirit pendant. But just as he was about to act, the raging voice of the heart of ambition abruptly subsided. Then, with hesitation, it remarked, "Your heart? It's not so bad after all." Forcefully piercing through Leon's defenses, glancing at the colossal, unimaginable ambition buried deeply, the heart of ambition fell silent momentarily before softening its stance a slight, extending an amiable offer. How about, you let me be your heart, and I'll keep the secrets from the Purification Bureau? Is that okay? Regardless, in this incident, the greatest beneficiary was the black goat and its master Leon. Agreeing to the Heart of Ambition's terms now would practically invite the Purification Bureau to investigate, so Leon, of course, couldn't agree. I refuse. How dare you refuse me? With much effort in putting aside its pride to offer an olive branch, only for Leon to reject it outright, the Heart of Ambition was incensed, shouting harshly, "You! Won't you reconsider?" Asterisk, damn it. I've never lost my demonic prestige like this before. Asterisk. Watching Leon and the black goat's astonished expressions, the Heart of Ambition pulsated with shame, wishing desperately to take back its words and silence all who had heard them. But after stealthily bypassing Leon's mental defenses and witnessing the ultimate arrogance seemingly destined to rule the heavens, and the enormous ambitions far more challenging than ruling the kingdom, the Heart of Ambition found itself reluctant to lose such a perfect host. For the third time, it issued a proud invitation. I beg you, let me be your heart. I promise to do everything you say. Asterisk, wasn't it? Could you at least have a little dignity as a great demon? Asterisk. Seeing the other version of himself not just fawning but utterly shameless, the black goat felt a surge of anger and an intense sense of crisis. When he persuaded Leon to stand by his side earlier, the reasoning was that the soul was exceedingly arrogant and definitely wouldn't be as obedient as himself. But looking at this dog's attitude now, damn it, is it this competitive to be someone's lapdog now? It's deceiving you. After getting horribly outmaneuvered by his own soul and encountering cutthroat competition, the black goat's fury surged as he menacingly said to Leon, "It's arrogance personified. Based on our understanding of it, this guy would never be so compliant. So, it's probably just stabilizing you and waiting for a chance to report to the Purification Bureau. Hurry up and act. You!" Watching Leon suddenly squint and grab the pendant again, the Heart of Ambition, having been ruthlessly backstabbed, flared up furiously. Before I was split into 7 pieces, I was undoubtedly number 1. You, a pathetic third, are only ranked there because the 4th was sloth and couldn't care less to compete with you. You, a trashy number 3, just found a suitable host before me, and now instead of bowing before the big brother, you're plotting to instigate him to take me down? You're forcing my hand. Disgusted by the 6th behavior of their 3rd brother, the Heart of Ambition ground its metaphorical teeth and raised the stakes. Aside from those damned horns, over the years I've found the whereabouts of the stomach and tail too. As long as you erase its will and let me be your heart, not only will I obey you completely, but I'll also reveal the locations of those items to you. Oh? You're even adding to the competition? Seeing Leon looking a bit tempted, and realizing the situation might be turning unfavorable, the black goat shuddered and hurriedly raised the stakes. Do I need you to tell me where those other items are? Once Leon climbs to the top of the Purification Bureau, we'll have all kinds of ways to get others to investigate. Plus, who are you to compete with me? I've been cooperating with the Purification Bureau for years, staying next to the director of the Zodiac branch office, learning countless hidden secrets and mysterious tales. At this point, the black goat sneakily glanced at Leon's soul and, seeing it seemingly leaning towards him again, relaxed and continued, "Leon, as long as you crush it, I'll answer whatever you ask in the future. Haven't you always been curious about Emma's experiences and that red-haired woman's past? Just erase its will, and I'll tell you right away. You, damn it, I can also offer him money, power, a chance to reach the pinnacle. Laughable. Those things are garbage in the face of absolute power. I think you're the garbage one. You're garbage. The most garbage. You're worse than that blasted thing." Watching the 2 sheep fighting tooth and nail to serve him, Leon remained silent for a moment before making a decision. Only kids make choices. Adults want it all. Just that. Stop arguing. The heart is definitely not yours. As the Purification Bureau's top-class discipline on par with the Emma's Remnant Scripture, the director's anomalous object training manual stated that one must never trust any intelligent, anomalous object. Regardless of their subservience, skepticism should always be maintained. Especially when they offer seemingly enticing conditions, it's crucial to remind oneself that most anomalous objects are born from extreme emotions and experiences, or are even part of some outer god or evil entity. Trusting them is committing a crime against oneself and the world at large. After repeating the director's training manual to himself several times and suppressing the impulse to agree, Leon felt the immense disappointment emanating from the heart of ambition's soul and cautiously suggested, "However, if you're willing to cooperate and prove that Bobby Lane did everything this time, I might reapply for you after the bureau checks you." Fine. Ah, good, good. Though it couldn't ascend in one step and replace Leon's heart immediately, the heart of ambition was still overjoyed, repeating good several times. As for when it could truly rise to power, once he uses me a few times and experiences the absolute control over everything, the kid will eventually beg me to be his heart. Leon, did you forget what that red-haired woman told you? Feeling the heart of ambition's smugness, the dethroned first lapdog Black Goat hurriedly said, "How can you trust the words of a demon? At times like this, you need to be ruthless. If you don't erase it and it turns around to inform the Purification Bureau." "You're right. I indeed can't easily trust the words of a demon." Giving a sideways glance at the soul of the Black Goat, with its vile intentions leaking out, Leon dryly reminded, "And have you forgotten that when I hold you, I also have soul vision and can see more clearly than you? If it was lying, I would have spotted it by now, all right?" Exposing the first lapdog's scheming, rendering it speechless, Leon shifted the target for the second lapdog back to Bobby Lane, then looked down at his blood-soaked coat. While preparing the motive and means for crime, corroborating his story with the Black Goat, and bribing the remaining eyewitness, the only thing left unexplained was why he lost so much blood but wasn't wounded. Taking a deep breath, Leon looked around, found a relatively clean spot to lie down, and gripped the Holy Spirit pendant tightly. Commit fully to the act. Knock, knock, knock. Come in. After knocking on the director's office door, a short man rubbed his hands with anticipation and asked impatiently, "Well, I don't actually have anything urgent. Just wondered how long the person you mentioned who can appraise items will be before they're back at work. Isn't little Leon here yet?" Hearing the short man's question, the red-haired director furrowed his brows slightly. Then, after sensing the situation of that hair of his, he replied, "He went on a field assignment yesterday to track down the whereabouts of an anomalous object. If he isn't here yet, he might have found something, investigated through the night, and is now catching up on sleep. If the task is done, he should be here soon." "That's good. Aha, by the way, what task was he on?" "Just so happens my friends are free, maybe I could." Jerry, are you being so kind to newcomers?" Knowing well what the short man was thinking, the red-haired director smirked and teased, "But I'm afraid you can't help. It's just a regular investigation task." While he lacks a bit of experience, Leon is steady and reliable. I trust his handling. Critic News, Ryan Blood Knight, over 100 officials and personnel with casualties. New Industry News, massive loss of middle-level members of Ryan family, arms company suspected of shutting down. Royal Mail News, solemn remembrance of Ryan family's fallen members. Corner Alley News, Lionheart fallen? Kingdom's two pillars might withdraw from the stage of history. The Sun News, shocking. The Ryan family massacred last night. The culprit is... A simple investigation nearly led to the annihilation of a family? Is this how you reassure me? After reading the front-page headlines of more than a dozen newspapers, the red-haired director felt a rush of blood to his head, as if he were going to float away. Year-end is approaching. The end-of-year reviews are almost here. At a time like this, a massive casualty event occurs in the capital city, and the deceased are from the old nobility. This would send the fledgling Virgin Bureau's performance this year plummeting straight to the bottom. Moreover, apart from the performance collapse, there appeared to be an even worse scenario. Looking at the front page of the Sun News, the photo of Leon stretching his bloodied hand towards Bobby Lane's body even in death, coupled with the bold and enlarged label, "Culprit." The red-haired director couldn't help but sigh deeply, feeling overwhelmed. Although it's just the Sun News, not the Capital Times or the Royal Mail News, how did you end up getting yourself thrown into a death cell while out on an investigation? What? The Ryan family is gone. And it's the handiwork of that damned rebel. Sit down, sit down. Seeing the policewoman sprang up from her chair upon hearing the news, the scar-faced brawny man couldn't help but frown and motioned her to sit back down. The Ryan family is still here, just that nearly 200 corps members and some high-ranking Klansmen died all at once. The old Duke suffered a severe blow, and he's probably on the brink of collapse. As for the culprit, it might not be that rebel. The Ryan family's incident is quite peculiar. Taking a deep drag off the cigarette in his mouth, the scar-faced brawny man pondered aloud. Though that rebel did appear at the scene and killed the primary heir, Bobby Lane, there were no signs of other intruders in the manor. It's unlikely for him alone to have wiped out the Ryan family's middle-level members in one night. And, according to the old Duke's testimony, he was awakened at midnight by a maid who put scissors to his neck, forcing him to abdicate early in favor of his brother Bobby Lane. I'd say what happened to the Ryan family yesterday seems more like internal strife. I see. Upon hearing this, the policewoman slightly relaxed. Then, with flickering eyes, she asked hesitantly, "If it's an internal strife, why not investigate thoroughly who the culprit is instead of locking that rebel in the death cell?" Isha, get used to using your brain. The scar-faced brawny man tapped his forehead with a finger while smoking, answering calmly. Whether that Leon the rebel is the culprit doesn't depend on what he did, but rather on which scenario is more suitable. Rebel assaulting a Duke's family, or a Duke's family internal strife? I don't understand. Simply put, the truth doesn't matter. Benefits and stance do. After extinguishing the cigarette on the table's glass top, the scar-faced brawny man pointed with his nicotine-stained finger at the stack of newspapers on the table, patiently explaining, "Notice anything? Except for the Sun News, which treats it as amusement, the other newspapers either commemorate the fallen, describe the situation, or focus on the event's impact. No one gives a clear answer regarding whether it's internal strife or an attack. These newspapers aren't avoiding the scoop or waiting for our investigation results. Rather, people behind them have reminded them not to rush to take sides. It's better to wait until the wind direction is established." Wind direction? I mean the intentions of the old nobility represented by the Ryan family, the reformist faction led by the princess, and the loose alliance formed by new nobility, big merchants, legislators, and the prime minister. These three forces are the real leaders of the kingdom. The consensus they reach after competing and vying will be the only correct direction. Upon explaining the concept of wind direction, the scar-faced brawny man lit another cigarette and spoke slowly. Among them, the reformist faction represented by the princess prefers the event to be seen as noble internal strife, giving them an excuse to take action against the old nobility and relieve the Minister of Defense's pressure. And as for the loose alliance, they would prefer it to be a rebel attack because the rebels' disruptive behavior affects merchants the most, which in turn affects legislators supported by the merchants and the prime minister who needs their votes. So, if this is determined to be a rebel attack, they can urge the other two parties to cooperate and prioritize dealing with the rebels to stabilize the business environment. Kind of understood, but also kind of didn't. The policewoman pondered with a furrowed brow before asking, "Then what about the old nobility? What do they think?" "They don't care." Hearing the policewoman's question, the scar-faced brawny man chuckled slightly, revealing a peculiar smile. Be it internal strife resulting in deaths or being attacked by rebels, both are equally disgraceful for them. Internal strife gives the princess an excuse to cut into them, and attacks will lead to losing more seats to legislators due to their inability to handle the rebels. In any case, regardless of how the Ryan Blood Knight is ultimately characterized, they have already lost the most. Who cares about winners and losers? I listened all this while and still don't know what will happen to Leon. Not knowing how to ask directly, the anxious policewoman repeatedly clenched her fists before probing cautiously. So, Director, what do you think will happen eventually? What fate awaits that damned rebel? That's not up to me to decide. Glancing at the policewoman's wrinkled sleeve corner, the scar-faced brawny man casually turned towards the window, smoking, and continued indifferently. It depends mainly on the princess. While legislators and merchants carry weight, their scattered goals make the alliance loose. If the reformist faction led by the princess is persistent, they will eventually retreat. So how things unfold really depends on whether someone influential in the princess's camp can stand up and reinforce her determination to target the old nobility. Someone influential. I understand. A little while later, after the scar-faced brawny man extinguished his cigarette and turned around, the policewoman had already disappeared. But the brawny man didn't seem too concerned about his competent subordinate's abrupt departure. Instead, he leisurely returned to his desk, unfolding a map of the capital city. Let me think. Next month's plan should be to demolish the theater in the southeast of the capital city. So when it comes to setting the defense, let's draw the line to the west first. What? Little Lion has already been taken away? Listening to the situation relayed by the gentlewoman in front of him, the red-haired director instinctively squinted his fox-like eyes and asked with an unpleasant expression, "How did it happen so quickly? In a case of this magnitude, normally, wouldn't it take 3 weeks to investigate?" I also find it a bit strange. Emma, who took the red-haired director's order to pick up the person, but ended up empty-handed, frowned and said, "Although leaving the death row is a good thing, the person who took Leon away must have a very special identity. No matter how I asked, the people over there wouldn't tell me anything." That part isn't hard to guess. After squinting his eyes and pondering for a moment, the red-haired director, familiar with the situation in the capital city, spoke. The Duke of Lionheart is the vice-chairman of the upper house. Although the Lionheart family has declined considerably in recent decades, they are still recognized as representative of the old nobility's dignity. So this case is indeed quite troublesome. The only ones who can interfere in a case of this magnitude, taking someone away before the investigation is complete, apart from us, are the chairman of the upper house, the prime minister, and the princess who represents the king's will. When saying this, the red-haired director glanced at Emma to observe her expression and then continued to explain. Due to the coup 6 years ago, the chairman's seat in the upper house is temporarily vacant, and it's unlikely the prime minister could respond so quickly, so the person who took him could only be the princess. I see. Hearing this, Emma nodded and then said calmly, "If it was the princess who took him away, Leon's safety should no longer be an issue. Do you need me to go over there and bring him back?" No, the less we intervene in normal society, the stronger the suppression effect of the Watcher's Palace, and the lower the intensity of abnormalities within that range. Moreover, the princess taking him away might actually be the best result. As long as she can overpower the Prime Minister and the Merchants Association, Leon can return on his own, but it might take 10 days to half a month of confinement. After rejecting Emma's offer, the red-haired director couldn't help but sigh as he looked at her eyes, as calm could be. "Emma, 6 years ago, when I couldn't agree to help with that favor, were you?" "Director, let's not talk about the past." Interrupting the red-haired director, Emma lowered her gaze slightly and spoke calmly. "Back then, I was immature and didn't understand your difficulties. You took me in despite the pressure, and that was already incredibly difficult. I shouldn't have made such excessive demands. But you still haven't given up, have you?" Looking at her good friend who avoided her gaze, the red-haired director rubbed his brow vigorously and then said, full of weariness, "With your skills, you haven't needed to practice firearms for a long time, yet in the past 2 years you've focused specifically on sniping, and even made an agreement with Little Lion to have him use that goat's soul vision to help you once. That shouldn't violate bureau regulations, right?" For the second time interrupting the red-haired director, Emma said calmly, "I won't use any anomalous object, and Leon won't know anything. It has nothing to do with the Bureau. Even after I complete my revenge, I don't plan to run. I'll turn myself in immediately. Can't a life for a life be fair? Yes, of course it can. Seeing her gaze, 10 times firmer than a rock, knowing he couldn't possibly persuade her, the red-haired director reluctantly nodded, harboring one last hope. And what about your daughter? Is she prepared? Hearing the red-haired director's question, Emma remained silent for a moment before evading the question. There are already 997 people named Almond dead beneath the redwoods in front of my house. 2 more won't make a difference. Sharply catching the brief hesitation in her eyes, the red-haired director quickly said, But really, can't you wait a little longer? I've waited for 6 years. Since you've already waited 6 years, why not wait just a little longer, not too much longer, just for another month? Gently holding Emma's arm to prevent her from leaving, the red-haired director spoke softly. Think about your daughter. Her birthday is coming soon. I have no right to stop you from seeking revenge, but why not wait 1 more month and spend her last birthday with her? Okay. I'll think about it. You think about it first, and when you decide, remember to let me know in advance. Letting go of Emma's arm and watching her leave his office, the red-haired director leaned back in his chair, full of melancholy, wishing for nothing more than to drown his woes in drink. First, there was the promising newcomer, whom he praised highly in front of the tourist director, inexplicably caught up in the Ryan family's internal strife, and now suspected of being the murderer of noble families. Next, his good friend and the Bureau's ace employee, after enduring for 6 relentless years, was finally ready to abandon everything to avenge her family betrayed and executed during the coup. Apart from these 2 issues, he still had to keep a close watch on the aristocrats colluding with the Scales Gold sect, prepare a countermeasure for the true god behind the Red Brick Road Hospital incident, reprimand and deal with the clearly overstepping Scales Gold sect, investigate several recent anomalies appearing in the capital city, and initiate an investigation into the Aquarius director. Sigh! After a heavy sigh and feeling overwhelmed, the red-haired director grabbed a bottle, downed a large gulp of tea, then pulled out a discarded file, listing out all the issues to be resolved on its back, and sat in his chair pondering deeply. Originally, Little Lion's matter was the most urgent, but since he was taken from death row by the princess, it's no longer an immediate concern. He just needed to prepare for the Bureau's ensuing investigation. Emma's issue was a bit more pressing, but there wasn't much he could do at the moment, relying on her daughter's birthday to buy time, hoping for a solution soon. As for the rest, the investigation into the Aquarius director would take time to confirm. The several anomalies in the capital city could be dealt with by sending other cleaners. The true god behind the Red Brick Road Hospital had been quiet so far. And after the Scales Gold sect caused trouble worrying about his retribution, they've long since gone into hiding, ceasing almost all activities, with no leads on them whatsoever. Even the nobles colluding with them are now. Knock, knock, knock. Just as she was fretting over the list on the desk, wondering where to begin, a knock sounded at the office door. Come in. With the red-haired director's response, the office door swung open, and a dark-faced, kind-looking old man, bloodshot eyes and all, strode in carrying a bag of things. Who are you? Facing the red-haired director's curious inquiry, the old man didn't immediately answer but placed the cloth bag on her desk before speaking. I'm the owner of the Charles Department Store. This is the Purification Bureau's branch in the capital city, right? After briefly introducing himself, old Charles untied the cloth bag, taking out 4 locked metal boxes, and arranged them on the desk. In these 4 boxes are something you call anomalous object. When I encounter an insoluble problem, if I meet its conditions, it answers and helps solve a question. Is this an anomalous object delivered straight to us? Covering the list on the desk with his hand to keep it from the man's view, the red-haired director nodded, squinting his eyes slightly. Yes, this is indeed the Purification Bureau, and we do handle anomalous objects. But we don't typically accept employment, and even our existence is confidential. So, could you tell me how you know about us and why you want to give us this anomalous object? Looks like I found the right place. Hearing the red-haired director's words, Old Charles, exhausted, breathed a sigh of relief and pointed to the boxes on the desk with a bit of excitement. It told me. A few days ago, my daughter was kidnapped and still hasn't returned. So I asked it a question, and it said to deliver it here to you, and my daughter would be saved. Daughter kidnapped? Catching the key phrase, the red-haired director raised an eyebrow, recalling the information Jerry's rat friends gathered and the Holy Spirit incident report submitted by Leon, Lionheart Ryan, Rose Marzini, Shield York. These three noble families teamed up against Charles Department Store, failed, and found themselves driven into a corner. The Holy Spirit they summoned was dealt with by Leon, so they resorted to kidnapping the Charles Department Store owner's daughter. It can be done, promising old Charles. The red-haired director placed the 4 small boxes into her drawer, glanced at the relieved old man and said with some difficulty, "However, although we can save your daughter, I'm afraid you'll have to wait a while. I'm sorry. Wait a while longer." Hearing the red-haired director's words, old Charles, having just relaxed slightly, tensed anew, hurriedly inquiring, "Why wait? Can't she be found and returned soon?" "She could originally." With a half-genuine sigh, the red-haired director said with a rather complex expression, "But we have very few employees skilled at finding people. The person best suited for this got into a little bit of trouble recently." Pinching his right thumb and index finger to indicate a tiny bit, the red-haired director said with an expression of helplessness. "He got tangled in the Ryan family incident, even framed as the culprit of the Ryan Blood Night. Although the princess wishes to protect him, many of the counselors backing the Merchants Association's big businessmen are refusing to let him go. So the Prime Minister and the lower house haven't resolved it yet. Tell me that person's name." Although tormented by his daughter Emma's abduction, after years in the business world, old Charles immediately understood the red-haired director's implication and straightforwardly promised, "I am the vice president of the Merchants Association. As long as I can ensure my daughter's safety, I can get your person out in 2 days tops." "Are you the one called Leon?" After hearing his name, Leon, who was heavily bandaged on his hands and shoulders and fixed on the hospital bed, struggled to turn his head. He saw an old man with graying hair and muscles on his brow knotted into a Chon shape. "And you are? You don't need to worry about who I am." Without answering Leon's question, the old man, with 2 guards, said with an iron-like face and expressionless demeanor, "You just need to know that you are now the primary suspect in the Ryan Blood Night case and are under investigation. So, is this man an interrogator from the Secret Investigation Bureau? But shouldn't interrogators have assistants? Why bring guards instead? And they don't seem to be ordinary guards?" Glancing at the 2 guards behind the old man, from their erect posture and the calluses at the base of their thumbs indicating handling guns, Leon roughly guessed their profession, which made him furrow his brows and turn his head back. Noticing the subtle change in Leon's expression, the old man's eyes narrowed slightly, scrutinizing Leon's profile with an eagle-like stare, coldly questioning him. "Do you have an issue with the military?" After giving the old man a sidelong glance, Leon racked his brain to guess his identity while unceremoniously retorting, "Can't I have one? Watch your mouth." As expected, like the typical trope in countless classic films, after Leon's provocation towards the high-status-seeming old man, the 2 guards, full of admiration for him, immediately furrowed their brows in anger and shouted, "Do you know? Stop!" Raising his hand slightly to signal the guards behind him to refrain from revealing their identity, the old man's tightly pursed lips twitched upward ever so slightly as he sized up Leon and said, "You want to know my identity? I already know." Although the black goat was not present to observe the old man's soul, Leon, judging from the man's expression and tone, vaguely felt that this man had a soft spot for talented troublemakers. So he boldly exposed, "The fabric on your chest has an odd sun-faded mark, likely from some metal. While you're not wearing epaulets, your clothes have slots for them. The 2 guards behind you have callous thumbs and are wearing boots issued to sergeants, but sturdier than typical ones, likely those of lieutenant-level officers. Moreover, they seem to be at most 30 years old. Having two 30-year-old lieutenants as guards with frequent opportunities to wear medals, there should only be a few such people in the entire military. And the only one who could be vaguely connected to me is just one person. After sneaking a glance at the old man, who, despite maintaining a poker face, seemed quite satisfied with the situation, Leon subtly let out a sigh of relief before calmly saying, "You're the Minister of Defense, right?" "You see. What did I tell you?" Seeing that Leon exposed her father's identity after just a couple of looks, the female police officer stopped outside the hospital room couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. "I said he was smart. You should have just asked directly whatever you wanted. Why go through all this trouble? Geez." After complaining to her mother for a bit, she was about to rush into the room when someone grabbed her arm and pulled her back. "Don't make trouble." Quickly stopping her reckless daughter, the middle-aged woman breathed a sigh of relief, then pinched her waist firmly. "Ouch!" The female officer was displeased by the pinch and turned her head, about to say something, when she met her mother's infuriated eyes. "Behave yourself. Haven't you caused enough trouble already?" Recalling how her daughter burst into her bedroom yesterday telling her that the suspect in the Ryan Blood Knight case was innocent and was only there to help her investigate the rebels, the middle-aged woman got angry all over again, giving the officer's thigh another hard pinch. "Ouch! Let it hurt." Dragging her troublesome daughter away from the room to prevent her from causing chaos inside, the middle-aged woman scolded her angrily. "Do you have any idea how much your father risked to cover for you this time? A lot, a lot. And telling your father to see the princess, claiming it was a chance to suppress the old nobility, and that the princess would certainly agree. Do you think this is something you can dabble in? Are you out of your mind?" "Yes, yes. And what's your relationship with that man? He's willing to risk so much to help you investigate and hasn't sold you out yet." "Just a friend." "Nonsense. Do ordinary friends ever go to such lengths? And I asked around at your bureau. Everyone says they saw you two pulling and tugging at each other. Maybe we were arguing." "So what were you arguing about?" "Just some casual quarrel." "Was the stir-fry good?" "Not bad, not bad." "Not bad, my ass." Watching her daughter tiptoeing to peek into the hospital room, mindlessly responding with "uh-huh" and "yeah" while absent-minded, the middle-aged woman got angry again and pinched her unruly daughter once more. "Ah!" Finally snapping back to reality, the female officer covered her thigh and ran a few steps away before complaining. "Mom, why do you keep pinching me? You deserve it." Listening to the chattering of his wife and daughter outside the hospital room, the sudden tightening breaths of the two officers behind him, and seeing Leon with a somewhat strange expression, the old man felt slightly embarrassed, took a deep breath, and instructed the officers behind, "Go. Tell them to keep it down." "Yes." With a formal reply and the young officer leaving the room quickly, their face slightly strained, the noise outside finally quieted down, although subdued whispers and a few muffled sounds could still be heard occasionally. "Since you've guessed it, I won't hide it." Forcing himself to ignore the commotion outside, the old man, who still showed signs of his once upright stature despite a slight stoop, said seriously, "I am indeed Isha's father. I got the decree from the princess to pull you out. But this wasn't due to Isha's pleading. It was necessary for me as the Minister of Defense. Tell me, what exactly happened at the Ryan house that night?" "What happened that night?" Leon couldn't help but chuckle at the question before sincerely answering. "What was bound to happen finally did. Before we get into this overdue good deed, I have some questions for you too." Glancing at the old man's tightly furrowed brows again, Leon earnestly inquired despite the officer's glaring eyes. "On the noon of the incident at the Ryan house, I was on the same vehicle with your daughter. She was escorting a rebel. Are you aware of what happened to her and her husband?" "Isha told me." Upon hearing this, the old man's expression turned somber, and he nodded. "I've invited people from the Secret Investigation Bureau to the military to investigate everyone involved back then. Although it's been a long time, and the investigation may take a while, we should get a conclusion in 1 or 2 months." "That's good. But her enemies should all be dead." so she might not need your conclusion. Having received the answer he wanted, Leon couldn't help nodding before continuing his inquiry. You must have investigated me too, right? What about the compensation owed to my family? Before you went to the Ryan house, Isha had already given me a list. All pensions withheld will be compensated. Pausing for a moment, the old man sighed, his ominously stooped posture becoming more pronounced. As for the serious misconduct in the pension disbursement, those involved are also being interrogated and investigated by the Secret Investigation Bureau, starting with me as the Minister of Defense. Before coming to see you, I underwent the relevant examination. The lack of epaulets and medals wasn't to hide my identity, but because they were removed for the investigation. Once everyone's investigation concludes, our punishments will unfold over 2 months, with the lightest being a salary deduction for a year, and the heaviest being total asset forfeiture and execution. The forfeited assets will be used to compensate the families who were cheated out of pensions. Fair enough, I have no more issues. After hearing the resolution of these 2 matters and witnessing the deep regret in the old man's eyes, Leon was slightly surprised and confessed directly. The report in the Sun News was accurate. Bobby Lane was indeed killed by me. As expected, after hearing Leon's words, the old man slightly furrowed his brow and then asked, "Why did you kill him?" "Because the job required it." Unsure of how much the old man knew about the underwater world, Leon didn't immediately concoct a story but instead retorted, "What do you know about the Purification Bureau?" "I've learned a little." Since he had already thoroughly investigated Leon's file, it was only natural not to ignore his work. After a moment of silence, the old man waved off 2 officers before speaking in a lowered voice. "The royal family has a manual. Once a name is written in it, they can maintain their soul's silence, even when aware of the presence of anomalies, thereby avoiding attacks by anomalies. My name is also in it. And since you mentioned the Purification Bureau, does this mean that the incident was not due to an internal conflict in the Ryan family, but rather related to your bureau's work content? A manual that could keep the soul in silence?" It seemed not all ordinary people were unaware of the existence of anomalies, just that there weren't many. After keeping this information in mind, Leon nodded and said, "Yes, Bobby Lane merged with an anomalous object. He not only attempted to seize the anomalous object I was safeguarding, but even threatened the lives of ordinary people to force me to reveal the Purification Bureau's secrets. Although the Purification Bureau has rules prohibiting actions against ordinary people unless necessary, the situation was urgent at the time, and he was no longer considered human, so I had no choice but to kill him. So that's how it was." After learning the truth of the Ryan Blood Knight from Leon, the old man compared it with other information he knew, and his tightly furrowed brow relaxed slightly. If Leon had revealed the answer directly at the beginning of the questioning, the old man might have seized on several doubts to continue his inquiry. But Leon first used 2 questions to challenge him, and after confirming his understanding of the Purification Bureau, he reluctantly disclosed the real situation of the Ryan Blood Knight. As the saying goes, a concubine is less worthy than a mistress less worthy than a stolen wife, and a stolen wife less worthy than a wife yet to be stolen. The situation at hand was somewhat similar. Compared to readily available answers, these hard-earned pieces of intelligence seemed inherently more credible, at least to the Minister of Defense, who only knew a little about the Purification Bureau. He basically believed Leon's words, albeit, "If possible, I'd like you to change the narrative." With a serious expression, the old man said to the slightly surprised Leon, "For your Purification Bureau, you can say whatever needs to be said, but when others outside the Bureau ask, I hope you can cooperate with us to label the Ryan family incident as an internal conflict." Although Leon, as an ordinary person, was not very familiar with the political landscape of the kingdom, he'd heard vague rumors about who stood behind the Minister of Defense. "Is the princess planning to take action against the old nobility?" "Yes." Admitting Leon's judgment frankly, the old man with graying hair said, "If you wish, you can put it more bluntly. This is a frame-up." After openly stating his intentions, the old man, with eyes as sharp as an eagle's, stared firmly into Leon's eyes, observing his expression closely as he swiftly explained. Regardless of whether it's rebels or internal conflict, the Ryan family, with so many key members dead, is already doomed. However, the old nobility is a collective. Even if the Ryan family completely loses power, their vacant positions won't fall to anyone else but will be swiftly divided among other nobles. By then, except for the Ryan Armaments Company becoming the Mazzini Firearms Company, and those from the Ryan family in the Department of Road Administration, Department of Finance, and Department of Agriculture being replaced by people named York or other surnames, everything will continue as usual. This country will see no change. After briefly explaining the possible situations, the old man slightly raised his voice, looking serious as he said, "But now it's different. As long as you're willing to cooperate and demonstrate that the Ryan family incident was an internal conflict, it will create an excellent opportunity for the princess to take a significant step towards a better direction for the kingdom." "I don't understand." Hearing this, Leon frowned in confusion and asked, whether it was internal conflict or an attack by rebels, weren't the ones who died all from the Ryan family? Why would this provide a good opportunity for the princess? Because the kingdom needs to maintain stability. No department can or should have large-scale vacancies all at once. Observing Leon, who clearly lacked understanding of political maneuvering. His knowledge wasn't even on par with his own daughter's. The old man considered for a moment before explaining as simply as possible. Among the 200-plus casualties in the Ryan family, over 100 were mid-level officials within various departments of the kingdom, especially in the Department of Road Administration and the military, where these two alone saw near 80 vacancies. Of the 47 subordinate branches of the military, 1/4 started accumulating files due to the incident, and 2 small subbureaus temporarily halted operations from losing their heads. Although the old nobility will quickly fill these vacancies, it will take at least 1 to 2 months for the new officials to take over and become familiar with their work, and possibly more than 3 months to fully resolve the backlog. Some related departments might even experience inefficient operations for half a year or longer due to unfamiliarity. After simply outlining the direct impact caused by the Ryan Blood Night, the old man continued with a serious expression. If just one noble family's internal conflict can result in such severe consequences, what if 2 families, 3 families, or even more nobles encounter issues one after another within half a year? This is the best pretext to act. If this event could be classified as internal strife, the princess could argue in Parliament to reduce the number of the old nobility in each department to curb their excessive power, citing the need to ensure the kingdom's normal functioning. Even if ultimately unsuccessful, a demand could be made for the old nobility to cede power, ensuring that a single noble family doesn't hold too many positions in any department to prevent related departments from coming to a standstill if a similar issue arises. And when these nobles can no longer have numerous clansmen in a department, those who side with the princess would have room to maneuver, potentially uniting with others to balance power or even reclaim control of key matters within that department. As he said this, seemingly envisioning the princess's successful reform sweeping away years of accumulated problems in the kingdom, the old man's face slightly reddened with excitement. His eyes filled with fervor as he said, "Take the Ryan family as an example. Just imagine, if the number of Ryan officials in the Department of Road Administration was reduced to half or even a third of its original number, could they still monopolize the construction of the old town like before? And if the number of Ryan officials in military procurement also dropped to half of its original count, could Ryan Armaments Company still consume so much of the military's budget annually?" "What is it now?" "Someone from Her Highness just arrived," one of the 2 young officers said with a peculiar expression as he entered the hospital room holding a dispatch order. The people sent by the princess said, "The old Duke of the Ryan family is on the verge, and those in the top 5 succession ranks need to arrive quickly. The Duke of Lionheart is near the end?" Upon hearing the young officer's words, the old man was slightly pleased and immediately stood up from the bedside, decisively saying, "In any case, consider my words first. An opportunity like the Ryan Blood Night won't come again. Your choice might become, what's wrong now?" "Well," looking at Leon, who was covered in bandages on the bed, the young officer said somewhat helplessly, "The one on the bed is the 5th in line of succession for the Ryan family. Asterisk what? Asterisk. Asterisk the Ryan family was truly finished. Asterisk. Looking at the Duke, whose neck was bandaged and who couldn't even sit up, merely leaning against the hospital bed. The surrounding nobles couldn't help but harbor similar thoughts. Having lost over 200 family members overnight, with its core strength nearly wiped out, the only one capable of turning the tide, the Duke, had his neck's blood vessels severed, leading to excessive blood loss and heart failure. It seemed he was barely breathing anymore. It could be said that the collapse of the Ryan family was completely in its final countdown. Apart from the shell of a duke and a seat of the vice speaker in the upper house, everything else would soon be divided among those present. At this thought, the representatives sent by various noble factions for witnessing or mourning couldn't help but exchange glances, revealing knowing expressions to one another. As one of the kingdom's twin pillars, the Ryan family's legacy was incredibly rich, even though everyone had some familial ties after hundreds of years, compared to that vast legacy. Such feelings were truly insignificant. As soon as the Duke handed over his title and breathed his last, countless mouths with sharp teeth would immediately come forward to gnaw away all of the Ryan family's bounty, leaving not even a bare bone behind. Asterisk damn these jackals. I'd rather feed the benefits to dogs than give them to you. Asterisk. The Duke knew precisely the style of these familial families. Looking at those seemingly respectful but actually malicious eyes, his murky eyeballs couldn't help but exhibit a deep venomous hatred. He then took what little air remained in his lungs and let out a heavy grunt. You speak. I'm listening. Upon hearing the grunt, the steward hurriedly bent down, bringing his ear close to the Duke's mouth. The nobles instinctively held their breath, and a sudden silence fell in the ward. After a few gasps, the Duke finally managed to utter a few words with great effort. First? Who is the first in line? Why still haven't? Ah! The old steward naturally understood that the first in line didn't refer to the deceased Bobby Lane but to the new first in line after the Ryan Blood Night. After quickly conversing with someone responsible, the steward adeptly adjusted the Duke's pillow, allowing him to breathe more easily, and then reported. He is almost here. The first in line is the closest, just in the building next door to this hospital. He will be here soon. Next? Next to us? Yes, next door. After hesitating slightly, the old steward still truthfully explained. The current first in line was originally third in line. 8 years ago, he had some conflicts with your brother, with Bobby Lane, and was hit on the back of the head with a stick. Although he didn't die, he became paralyzed, with no sensation below the collarbone. So he can only get out. Whether because of the situation of the first in line or upon hearing the name of the one who caused him to end up like this, the Duke couldn't help but fly into a rage, surprisingly managing to shout a disjointed command. Let him, the first, get out. Second. 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 Upon hearing this, the old steward gritted his teeth, then leaned in again to whisper. The second is in an asylum. Back then he was competing with Bobby for the control of the arms company, and somehow he went mad. Asterisk Bobby Lyon. Asterisk. Hearing that name again, the Duke's heart rate, which had dropped to nearly 40, suddenly spiked to over 80, a flush of color appearing on his pale, aging skin. Asterisk damn it. Why were you in such a hurry? If you had just waited a bit longer, just a few more years, the Ryan family would have been yours. You damned. Asterisk. Asterisk thinking of his clever yet detestable brother. The Duke's eyes welled up with deep sorrow. After losing the ability to father children due to an injury when young, he had practically raised this brother as his son. Bobby Lyon lived up to expectations, using tactics the Duke couldn't fully comprehend to ruin rival families, successfully elevating him to the Duke's position. So, the brothers' relationship had always been good. Asterisk. Asterisk but why were you so impatient? Asterisk. Asterisk I knew you longed for my position, but couldn't you wait even 2 years? Everything would have been yours after my death. Asterisk. Recalling his brother's betrayal, The Duke's weakened heart throbbed with pain as he weakly said, 3, 4, 5. Any of them normal? These 3 may be normal as individuals, but none are suitable. You might want to call in the next ones as well. The old steward sighed as he explained. The 3rd and 4th in line are twins, not even 2 years old. The younger one can't even speak, and the 5th. Here they come. The 5th in line is here. Asterisk? Asterisk. Another one impaired? Upon seeing the wheelchair outside the door and the bandaged Leon seated in it, the Duke, slightly recovered, couldn't help but bulge his eyes, raising his hand to point and shout at the old steward. Didn't you say 3, 4, 5? All. His skin is just injured with some infection at the wound, but he is sound-minded. The Duke's muddled eyes moved up and down, assessing Leon's condition, and he nodded slightly. Though another patient, he appeared to be a capable adult, certainly better than the previous 4. Then him. Feeling he was nearing his limit, the Duke firmly decided on the successor. He then instructed, have him come here. I need to tell him how to handle those, eyeing the Ryan family. Coy. Well, maybe you should consider some others. Slight hesitation marked the old steward's voice as he suggested. He has black hair, not golden. Plus, there are others eligible for inheritance after the first 5. The old steward's hesitation and expression of wanting to speak but hesitating illuminated the fact that something was being concealed from him, leading the Duke to cast a stern gaze. You, hiding something, speak. Speak quickly. Although worried about the Duke's capacity to handle the truth, being pressured to this point, the old steward could only lean in, reluctantly whispering, your brother was killed by him. Asterisk. Asterisk. Countless overwhelming emotions, like a bursting flood, surged into the Duke's heart upon hearing the old steward's words. Asterisk gazing at the person who'd killed his only brother, yet avenged him at the same time. The Duke's heartbeat doubled and then doubled again, skyrocketing to 160. In a final effort, he sat up from the bed, pointing at the bewildered Leon, shouting asterisk. You! Ugh! Duke of Lionheart, deceased. In the presence of all witnesses, the Duke of Lionheart nominated you 3 times to inherit the Duke's title. You have obtained the silver-level identity badge Duke of Lionheart. Duke of Lionheart, one of the kingdom's twin pillars and the 29th Duke of the Lane family. Wearing effect, you naturally gain some favors when dealing with those who recognize noble status, else you face their intense hostility. Advancement route. None. Hidden traits need not be worn while you only nominally belong to the Ryan family, not by true bloodline, should this fact be revealed. This badge will undergo an unknown transformation. Asterisk, this is just outrageous. How can something so absurd happen? Asterisk. Staring at the panel with a new silver badge shining brightly, not only were all the nobles in the hospital room stunned, but Leon in the wheelchair was also caught completely off guard. Just a few days ago, he had infiltrated the Ryan family, not only taking out their first heir but also methodically eliminating over 200 of their core members, single-handedly orchestrating the Ryan blood night that plunged the Ryan family into hell. Yet, the old Duke of the Ryan family must have lost his mind, because not even 5 seconds after Leon was wheeled into the hospital room, he inexplicably named Leon as the next heir, making him the biggest beneficiary of the Ryan blood night incident. Mad. Isn't this a trap? As the ultimate beneficiary and a suspect of having the ability to orchestrate the Ryan blood night, if anyone in the Purification Bureau had any common sense, they'd dispatch a whole team of investigators to thoroughly scrutinize him from top to bottom. Everyone, please listen to me. Suddenly burdened with a hot potato weighing 2 tons on his face, Leon tightened his brows, not feeling guilty in the least but genuinely spooked, and hurriedly refused. I'm not interested in this title. Maybe you should consider someone else. You scoundrel! Before Leon could finish speaking, an old man with white hair and a luxurious outfit stepped out from the crowd, glaring disdainfully and chastising. This is the Duke of Lionheart's title. and it was personally designated by the old duke on his deathbed. Do you think you can dismiss it with just a word? And what the hell does that have to do with you? As a somewhat cultured person, Leon might have watched his language if this had been any other time, but right now he was eager to get rid of this hot potato and shed his suspicion for orchestrating the Ryan Blood Night, so he wasn't going to be polite. Who the hell are you? After delivering a response that stunned the nobility, Leon quickly examined the old man's attire, finding a teal-colored coronet with 3 single feathers on his chest badge. Although cameras existed by this time, their high cost meant they weren't widespread, so recognition still often relied on documents and badges, making the kingdom's insignia law quite stringent. According to insignia law, all badges had to be made following strict guidelines, especially the noble coat of arms representing identity, which must include coronet, shield badge, mantling, and cassock without omission. Among these, the most important is the coronet symbol, used to identify rank. Apart from representing the royal family's diamond king-duke, the 5 ranks of duke, marquis, earl, viscount, and baron must correspondingly use the colors of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and tin. Moreover, under the royal family's diamond coronet, there would be a robin as the badge, and under the 5 ranks, corresponding single feathers were required, symbolizing the nobles as vital wings supporting the royal family. For the highest-ranking duke, the base is 5 feathers, and for the lowest-ranking baron, the base is 1 feather. Those who inherit a title and achieve significant merit can add an additional feather as an honorary marker. The 3-feather bronze crown on the badge of the white-haired old man indicated he belonged to the 3rd-tier earl in the kingdom's rank system, the kind who had inherited the title but achieved nothing significant in his life. Ha! With such a big mouth. I thought you were some big shot, but it turns out you're just an earl? Wanting to get rid of the troublesome duke title quickly to avoid attracting the Purification Bureau's scrutiny, Leon decided to go all out, smirking disdainfully at the white-haired old man, with the intention of offending as many people as possible, hopefully making them work to elect someone else as duke. Leon endured the piercing pain from his skin and rose from the wheelchair, slowly walking over to the white-haired old man in front of everyone, and forcefully poking at the 3-feathered bronze crown on his chest. A 3rd-tier earl, and only with the most basic 3 feathers. So you're a small fry, huh? Asterisk small fry? Me? A small fry? Asterisk. After hearing Leon's fair evaluation of him and feeling the peculiar gaze from the surrounding nobles, the white-haired old man, staggered by the poking, flushed with anger, began to roar with rage. You! What you? Am I wrong? Fearing his attack was insufficient to shake off the cursed duke title, Leon secretly switched his badge, equipping the silver-level elite performer, then crossed his arms and slightly tilted his head, smiling derisively. A 3rd-tier earl with 3 feathers. Ha, the royal family's feathers aren't worth much, don't you know? Grovel to collect some tax, feign a disaster relief effort, or even send a lavish gift when the princess was born, and you could have earned a feather from the royal family. You've already lived this long, and your badge still only has 3 feathers. How are you not a small fry? What I? If I were you, I'd have sliced my throat already. With the help of the silver-level elite performer, Leon's rather handsome face displayed genuine disdain and a cutting contempt. Believe me, you should just die soon. Patting the sagging old face of the white-haired old man, Leon leaned closer and sincerely advised. Judging by your vigorous appearance, you could continue wasting food for another 20 or 30 years. If you hang yourself today, you might save the kingdom a lot of money, which would count as a kind of service. You can imagine, if the royal family learned about your great achievements and, in their happiness, rewarded you with something as measly as a feather, wouldn't you finally break free from being a nobody? Wouldn't that be perfect? A win-win? Nonsense. Ridiculous. Damn you. The white-haired old man, face flushed with purple from the utmost mockery and insult, was about to retort when he saw Leon's eyes. There were 2 parts disdain, 3 parts scorn, and the remaining 5 parts were filled with sincerity. This damn bastard was actually telling the truth. He genuinely believed from the bottom of his heart that it was more valuable for a nobody noble like himself to die immediately rather than live. Gasp! Gasp! After being struck by the sincerity in Leon's eyes, all the rebukes and even the most poisonous curses got stuck in his throat, turning into a blood pressure exceeding 200 and a mouthful of thick, hot phlegm that burned like fire, causing the old man to roll his eyes and collapse stiffly backward. What the hell? Leon, surprised by the sudden collapse of the old man after just 2 sentences, instinctively took a step back. You all saw it. I just poked him with my finger twice. It was he himself who fell over. Yes, we all saw it. You indeed only poked him twice with your finger, but you just stabbed his heart with at least 1,000 verbal daggers. Most nobles cared about their face, at least on the surface. Seeing an old man faint on the spot after just 1 rebuke and being stripped of his dignity and severely insulted, the dozens of nobles in the ward immediately fell into complete silence. This new Duke of Lionheart was indeed somewhat reckless and indifferent. The white-haired old man's situation was a warning. If anyone else dared to speak up, risking such public embarrassment in front of so many in-laws might not be worth it. After a short wait, several familiar nobles called for people to carry the old man out, and the entire group of nobles tacitly maintained silence. Even though no one reproached Leon again, surprisingly, no one suggested replacing him with another heir, essentially indicating a direct agreement. After all, he was a successor of the Ryan family, not theirs. The trouble couldn't affect them. As for the dignity of the nobility, let's laugh. Face meant nothing compared to tangible interests. If the successor Duke of Lionheart had been shrewd and capable, everyone might have opposed it. After all, the more the new Duke could protect the Ryan assets, the less there would be to divide among themselves. But now, seeing the new Duke, who, during the Ryan family's need for support, brazenly offended the in-laws and even caused a public scene, satisfied looks appeared in the eyes of the dozens of nobles. Fine. A reckless fool with no cunning, no brains and arrogance, is just the right fit as the new Duke of Lionheart for now. It's just that after a month or 2, when everyone has almost divided the Ryan family assets, this Duke's tenure will likely end, right? There were not many real power players in the Ryan family who could decisively influence the inheritance of the title. Aside from the old Duke who strongly supported Leon, most were already killed or crippled by Bobby Lane, then suppressed into silence by Leon. What remained were only a few old or weakened cats. The people with the most influence were the in-laws present in the ward. Ignoring the strong opposition of the new Duke himself, the Ryan family in-laws took less than 5 minutes to decide to follow the old Duke's will, allowing Leon, who had black hair and eyes, far from looking any part of the Ryan, to become the new leader of over 90,000 golden-haired Ryan members. This was too absurd. It was simply child's play. Upon learning from the officer who brought Leon into the ward how the new Duke was chosen, the Minister of Defense felt both thrilled and annoyed. Thrilled because his daughter assured him, patting her chest, that Leon wasn't someone who would side with the nobles. Rather than worrying about him colluding with the old nobility once he became a duke, it was better to worry that he'd upend the table altogether or even conspire with the rebels for another bloodbath, wiping out all of the Ryan family in-laws in one stroke. If Isha's assessment was correct, having such an unnoble duke successfully take the helm would be a tremendous boon for the princess's reforms. Having an insider in the impenetrable upper house was like stabbing a knife into the heart of the old nobility. As for why he was annoyed, Your Highness, these old nobles must be dealt with quickly. Glaring angrily at the calm-faced princess behind the desk, the old man couldn't help but say, the Ryan family's influence lies with the Department of Road Administration and the military, mainly in public infrastructure and arms procurement. But the core power of these crucial departments is still tightly controlled by the old nobility, and they can essentially hand off power without formal appointments. The candidate they've chosen is someone you just have to stamp your approval on. How can this be allowed? Yes, I will, but it can't be now. The princess behind the desk continued reviewing the new Duke's file, her expression serene as she spoke. These old nobility are the rotten flesh parasitic on the kingdom, which must be excised. However, if not done properly, the wound will bleed incessantly. Father once ousted 3 consecutive ministers of finance and eliminated many small to medium families in an attempt to control the kingdom's finances personally, which then triggered an intense backlash. The result of their struggle was that the entire kingdom's finances were paralyzed for half a year, successively revealing a deficit totaling nearly 6 trillion, almost collapsing completely. 6 years ago, the National Defense War couldn't even fully cover the military expenses, and the deficit has been accumulating to this very day. She paused here, picked up a pen, and scribbled something on Leon's file, then continued, "So one mustn't rush such matters. If the cost of excising the old nobility is temporarily paralyzing this nation, it will only cause an even greater disaster, so it must be done step by step. And the current situation is actually just right, especially with our newly appointed Duke of Lionheart. Do you know what he once said?" Looking at the part circled in the file, the princess recited in a calm voice, "As for the royal family and the nobility, they are just lice growing in the crotch. Once the blood-sucking pains, they should be grasped and squeezed to death." Completely unaware of Leon's rebel's identity, the Minister of Defense was utterly shocked upon hearing the princess's words. However, just as he was about to speak, he noticed the princess's usually steady mouth curve slightly upward almost imperceptibly. Though it's not the most appropriate metaphor, it's not wrong. Not angered by being compared to lice in the crotch, the princess closed Leon's file, opened the report regarding the inheritance situation, and then smiled as she said, "Duke of Lionheart. Duke of Louseheart. Upon thinking about it, it's quite ironic. This duke who sees the nobility and the royal family as lice has now become one of the most robust lice in this nation, possessing the ability to leech extensively off the kingdom. I am curious to see how he will act. Oh, by the way, take a look at this." After handing over the report, the princess, who usually furrowed her brows, surprisingly chuckled lightly and then pointed at the records in the report with interest, saying, "The earl, who fainted on the spot after being scolded by him, actually placed a cabbage in his bedroom and then proclaimed that this Duke of Lionheart, Leon Lane, will rot faster than his cabbage. Cabbage? Does that mean at most 2 or 3 months?" After glancing at the report, the Minister of Defense couldn't help but frown, recalling the look of adoration in his daughter's eyes when she mentioned Leon. "Princess Veronica." The Minister of Defense sighed internally and then took the initiative to ask, "What do you think? How long can this duke sustain himself? Will he be liquidated after the Ryan family is completely divided?" "He won't be liquidated." The princess shook her head after thinking. Except for that earl whom he offended to death, the other nobility wouldn't care about an empty-shell duke. However, the Ryan family might not live longer than that cabbage. After losing family members from the military and the Department of Road Administration, the Ryan family's influence in the military has completely bottomed out, leaving only one seat in the upper house in the political arena. In business, there seems to be a bit left, but it's all propped up by military and Department of Road Administration orders. In military, politics, and business, the Ryan family now holds none. What kind of person would it take to support this soon-to-collapse setup? Indeed, the Ryan family's current situation seemed destined to collapse completely within 2 months. Upon hearing the princess's assessment, the Minister of Defense couldn't help but shake his head as well, a peculiar sense of melancholy emerging in his heart. No matter who became the new Duke of Lionheart, he would only be able to watch helplessly as the Ryan family fell apart. And the princess and himself, who were both trying to keep things together, were not much better off. The influence of the old nobility was deeply entrenched, and nearly a third of the 20-something major departments were controlled by them, clinging to the country's body like fat lice, ravenously sucking its blood. The merchants and members of the lower house, initially supported to counter the old nobility's control over the upper house, had once played a restraining role, but after 100 years of development, they too had become unmanageable, now using their legislative power in the lower house to desperately seize benefits for themselves. With the support of both the upper and lower houses, the kingdom's regulation of commercial activities had become increasingly lax in recent years. Commerce in the kingdom was clearly booming, yet the tax revenue was rapidly declining. The nation's wealth began to frenziedly concentrate in the hands of the big merchants and the old nobility, growing ever fatter, while ordinary people and the kingdom itself were becoming increasingly emaciated and weakened. These maladies might have been barely contained, but the war 6 years ago had torn everything apart. The kingdom's finances were now in continual deficit, military preparedness was lax, and rebels roamed unchecked. All these issues teetered on the brink of explosion. Even though, through the efforts of consecutive royal administrations, financial power had been returned to the royal family, and he himself, as part of the princess's faction, had been elevated to the position of Minister of Defense, gaining the ability to intervene in military affairs, the overall situation remained bleak. Should the princess's reforms eventually fail, unable to sweep away these chronic ailments, then the entire kingdom would be no more than a slowly rotting cabbage. Princess Veronica! At that thought, the gray-haired old man took a deep breath, made an effort to straighten his slightly hunched back, and said solemnly, "After the Ryan Blood Night, there were quite a few real positions left vacant in the military. I'm planning to seize some more if your highness has no other matters to discuss. Then I'll take my leave." "Nothing more." She shook her head, noting the Minister of Defense's increasingly white hair since their last meeting. Warmth flickered in the princess's eyes as she added a caring remark. "Your complexion doesn't look well lately. Please take better care of your health. I understand time is pressing, but if you collapse from exhaustion, all our efforts over the years will truly be in vain." "Certainly." Responding to the princess somewhat ambiguously, the old man declined her offer to see him out, striding from the room with 2 young officers. Once his footsteps faded entirely, the door was tapped softly a few times. "Come in." As the door creaked slightly open, a young man wearing a dark wool coat with an air of weariness on his face and shoulders slumped, entered and plopped into the chair opposite the princess. "You handled things quite well this time." Instead of taking offense at the visitor's rudeness, the princess waved the new Duke of Lionheart's file in her hand, then smiled as she inquired, "A person just newly added to the Ryan family tree, whose hair isn't even blonde, managed to become the new Duke of Lionheart. How did you do it?" "Very simply." The weary young man lifted his eyelids, pulled 2 dice from his pocket, and placed them on the table, then explained without much energy. Without doing anything, the chance of the old Duke choosing him was only 3%. But if 5 to 7 heirs were eliminated, elevating his succession rank to the top 5, the probability increased to 15%. Then, by secretly infiltrating the hospital, finding the old Duke's medication and tampering with it using alchemical supplements to quicken the heart, and kidnapping the old Duke's butler's granddaughter to coerce him into deliberately provoking the Duke's emotions, the probability rose to 36%. Though no one touched them, the 2 dice on the table shook and changed with the young man's story. First, 1 die stood on its edge, the other showed 3 points. Then one showed 1 point, the other 5. Followed by one showing 3 points and the other 6, exactly matching the young man's figures. Lastly, ordering a cartload of fruit from the Banana Fruit Company, and secretly unlocking the carts will lock at an intersection to overturn and block the road to the hospital, delaying Leon's arrival until the old Duke was at his most emotionally charged moment, increased his chance to 66%. As the weary young man spoke, the dice turned, both showing 6 points up, ending his explanation. "After that, it's up to luck." Pointing to the dice on the table, the weary young man summed up, "As long as events unfold within that 66% range, he'll be chosen by the old Duke. If not, someone else will become the new Duke." "I see." After hearing the account, the princess lightly clapped her hands twice, then praised, "It's a truly fascinating ability. Even after collaborating with you several times, it still feels incredible listening to you recount it. Things that seemed unrelated, when done according to your requirements, could always bring any success rate up to about 60%. It's not about 60%, it's 66%. Correcting the princess's words seriously, the weary young man gestured to the dice on the table. "The die on the left is the tens digit, the die on the right is the units digit. The dice go up to 6 points only, so the maximum success rate is 66%. So, Have you considered using two 10-sided dice instead? No, only these two dice can achieve that effect. Oh well. Blinking with slight disappointment, the princess took out a blank check, placed it on the table, and handed it over. This is the agreed payment. A pleasure working with you. Sorry, but there's an additional fee required this time. Folding the check and putting it away, the weary young man said seriously, You didn't tell me before that Leon Lane was also an employee of our 6th Purification Bureau and quite favored by the director. My actions this time carried considerable risk, so the price should be 10% higher than we agreed. I can accept the fee increase. Frowning slightly, the princess did not counter. Instead, after contemplating, she proposed, but since this additional fee wasn't part of our original agreement, as compensation, you also have to use those two dice to answer one more question for me. Fine. Nodding in agreement, the weary young man picked up the dice to ask, What is it you'd like to know? The same as before. Taking a deep breath, the princess slightly closed her eyes and softly said, What exactly must I do to save this country? Again with this question. Hearing the princess's words, the lethargic young man pondered for a moment. He didn't immediately throw the dice. Instead, he suggested, Your Highness Veronica, although the results of my dice only reflect the present moment and, in cases involving a long time span, the conditions and outcomes often change, but they don't always change every time. Since the last time you asked this question, only a few months have passed. If you ask again now, the result shouldn't be much different, so it's best to ask a new question. No, I'll stick with this one. The princess shook her head, speaking calmly. This is my innate responsibility, and it's my only hope at the moment. What else could I ask about? Since you insist, very well. After shrugging helplessly, the lethargic young man released his right hand, and two dice tumbled onto the table, bouncing a few times before landing on two bright red ones. Due to the Ryan family matters, your chance of saving the kingdom has indeed increased by 2 points since last time, reaching 11%. The lethargic young man spoke as he lightly tapped the table with his knuckles, causing the two dice to roll again. Next is controlling the military department and cooperating with the Minister of Defense. By filling the vacant positions left by the Ryan family, the probability will increase by another 2 points. Next, join forces with the Prime Minister and intervene in the upper house to suppress the old nobility. Then unite with the old nobility to suppress the lower house and introduce bills to restrict certain commercial activities and increase taxes. After doing these, the probability will rise to 26 points. After that, find a way to become the queen and take advantage of clearing the rebels and resisting the new wave of invasion. Seize the opportunity to reclaim military, financial, legislative, personnel, and other powers, and promote a group of officials who share your vision. By then, the probability would leap to 51 points. It was indeed similar to the last time. Listening to the gradually increasing probability and these things she was already planning to do, the princess couldn't help but smile, then slightly shake her head. Indeed, if she accomplished all this, she'd certainly have the ability to save the country. But these tasks were not as simple as ordering a carriage load of fruit or secretly removing its wheels. Each and every suggestion he made would require countless days and nights of exhausting effort and tough negotiations over years to implement. The road she had to walk was still very long. Clatter, clatter. Just as the princess was listening attentively, for some unknown reason, the dice on the table, after reaching 51, did not continue to 66. But instead started to spin rapidly. Under the wide-eyed gaze of the lethargic young man, the two dice on the table spun faster and faster, eventually causing the hardwood desk to emit black smoke and a pungent burning smell to fill the entire room. What was going on? Although anomalous objects were almost impossible to destroy this way, the lethargic young man instinctively reached out to stop them, trying to forcibly halt the dice, but as soon as his hand touched them, the rapidly spinning dice cut into his palm. As he hurriedly withdrew his hand in pain, the two blood-stained dice clattered against each other a few times and eventually stopped moving. Two sharp corners pointed towards the ceiling, lying quietly in the small pits worn into the table. Seeing the lethargic young man's stunned gaze at the dice, the princess couldn't help but feel a pang in her heart and hurriedly asked, "Why are the two corners, which represent 0, facing up? What does this mean?" "It means..." This time it didn't fully succeed. Glancing at the dice stained with his own blood and the rings of blood left on the table, the lethargic young man covered his still bleeding right hand, frowning. "The question you asked involved a Leon value of over 60. What I mean is, a true God-level existence noticed our probing and thus blocked this inquiry." Asterisk, a true God. How did this end up involving a true God again? Asterisk. As someone aware of the existence of the Purification Bureau and anomalous objects, the princess also knew some intelligence about true gods, understanding that they weren't as grand and generous as described by believers. Her expression immediately tightened. Could it be that a true God will descend upon the kingdom in the future? Probably not. The lethargic young man shook his head at these words, hesitating slightly. A true God-level existence doesn't necessarily mean it's a true God. While I didn't see the appearance of the one involved, judging by the size, it seemed to be a human, just with multiple wings on its back. And strangely familiar, recalling the vision he had just seen, the image of the black-haired, black-eyed, slightly lean true God, with multicolored wings on its back was firmly imprinted in his memory. The lethargic young man reassured. And it may not even be targeting the kingdom. If it really is a true God, you might conflict with a believer of interest to them in the future, or have some cooperation, or perhaps meet several times consecutively. These incidents have a probability of being detected by him and interrupting the probing. However, with our Purification Bureau here, there won't be significant problems. Numerous true gods have attempted to descend before, but all were eventually driven back. No true God can remain long-term in this world, so you don't need to worry too much. Asterisk, but that was a true God. How could I not worry? Asterisk. Hearing the lethargic young man's words, the princess couldn't help but take a deep breath and then asked, "So, can you try to roll the dice again? To confirm the situation." "Sorry, that's truly not possible." Raising his still bleeding palm, the lethargic young man waved it in front of the princess, helplessly saying, "That existence's personality seemed relatively mild. After discovering my probing, he didn't get angry, only gave a slight punishment. But if I continue to recklessly probe the future, although getting killed is unlikely, at the very least, I'd be bedridden for several months." "All right. Thank you for your efforts." Sighing in disappointment, the princess silently took out a checkbook, not only paying the agreed-upon fee but also adding a generous bonus. She then advised, "After some time, if that true God is no longer watching you, then I'll immediately make up for this result and notify you quickly of any anomalies." After providing this assurance to an old customer, the travel-worn lethargic young man took out a bandage, wrapped his injured right hand, decisively took his leave, retrieved his stored suitcase, and headed to the Purification Bureau. Although the bureau chief was relatively easygoing, the headquarters had set quite stringent management rules for his precious abilities, which could easily change the situation. Especially regarding whereabouts. Every place he went and everyone he contacted must be meticulously reported. So only during the gaps following task completion could he sneak out to earn some extra money. And he had already delayed almost 2 days helping a new colleague ascend to the Duke's throne. Any further delay in his return to task settlement could result in facing headquarters scrutiny alongside the new colleague. Pushing open the heavy door to the Purification Bureau, towing the suitcase through the dim hallway, he saw sunlight illuminating the end of the corridor, with the director's office door seemingly open. Hesitating slightly, he decided not to return directly to his office, but instead, he took out a prepared task report and headed to the director's office. "Director, I've returned from the investigation. My apologies." Ready to speak, he noticed others in the office and politely apologized, then instinctively glanced at his colleague in the room. A young man with black hair, black eyes, and a slightly narrow frame looked back at him with mild surprise. Damn it! When he saw the familiar back, The lazy young man couldn't help but shudder all over, as if someone had opened his skull and poured a bucket of icy water mixed with ice shards into it, making him feel completely unwell. Although he hadn't seen that person from the front during the dice-throwing process, except for not having wings on his back, this person's hair color and figure were almost identical to the one before him. Especially when this person noticed him and turned to glance in surprise. The expression was practically carved from the same mold. No wonder he felt that person looked familiar. Even though he hadn't interacted with him during the process of promoting him to the position of Duke, he'd seen his back in the newspapers twice in the past 2 months. Once, it was when the cash register at Charles department store collapsed, and he was buried under a mountain of gold wheels. More than half of his body was trapped, which was captured in a photo by a reporter from the Sun News. The other time was recently when he was found battered and lying on the ground at the Ryan Manor. That photo was also taken by the police and made it to the front page of the Sun News. Shocked that the newly confirmed colleague had true God-level potential, how should I face him? Should I start flattering him immediately or hold back a bit before doing so? Urgent. Waiting online. Why is this person so strange? Under the complex gaze of the lazy young man, Leon felt a chill in his heart. After a moment of silence, he awkwardly tugged at the corners of his mouth and smiled politely at the other. However, to his great surprise, the person shivered suddenly at his goodwill, then instinctively took a half-step back. What's his problem? Just as Leon was baffled, the red-haired director also noticed the young man's abnormality. After thoughtfully observing both of them, she smiled and said, "You're back pretty quickly this time. Leon, you can call him Tom. Although he looks young, he joined us a few years before Emma. He's already in his 30s and is also a first-level disaster handler." A first-level disaster handler? Hearing the title, Leon immediately grew solemn. The director had once told him that those assigned as first-level disaster handlers were usually ace employees from various purification bureaus, people who could independently lead teams to handle large-scale disasters. Among the elite of the first-level disaster handlers, as soon as there's a vacancy in the director position of the 75th Subbureau, they might very likely be promoted to fill it. The 2 first-level disaster handlers of the Virgo Bureau currently belong to this category, far surpassing the ordinary first-level handlers as ace elites. That also meant this strange young man before him was already a half-step director-level powerhouse. Senior Tom. Since the other was an old-timer and one of the aces in the Purification Bureau, and Leon, despite having undergone 2 lifetimes, was indeed not yet 17 in this life, having only half the other's age, he politely addressed first, "I'm Leon Lane, a new employee confirmed this month. Currently just a level 3 accident handler. I hope you can guide me more in the future." You're too polite." Unconsciously hiding his dice-scarred right hand behind him, the lazy young man forced a congenial smile. "There's no need to talk about guidance. I just came a few years earlier than you. It's better for us to learn from each other." Learn from each other. Still unable to grasp the disposition of this future true god, and fearing to roll the dice lest he reveal himself, the lazy young man looked to the red-haired director and said, "Director, I just came to report the task. Nothing urgent. Since you still have matters to discuss, I won't disturb you." "Okay." Squinting at the oddly behaving lazy young man, then at Leon, who seemed to have a good impression of him, the red-haired director nodded, taking the task report. "Just give me the report. You can go busy yourself." "All right." Once the lazy young man walked out of the director's office, and the sound of his leisurely footsteps gradually faded, the red-haired director turned to Leon and asked with a cheerful smile, "Little Leon, what do you think of this Senior Tom?" "What do I think?" Hearing the red-haired director's words, Leon thought for a moment and replied, "Senior Tom seems to be quite amiable, but there's a long-standing stain on his collar. His nails are trimmed rather roughly, and the leather parts of his shoes and luggage weren't well maintained, severely cracked. It seems he's a bit careless about little things. You observe quite carefully, but that's not what I'm asking." The red-haired director shook her head, her gaze narrowing as she softly said, "Little Leon, when you have the time, check his soul with that sheep. See if there's anything strange about his soul." Leon was slightly taken aback at the words, then frowned. You suspect him? I don't suspect him. The standards for recruitment in our Virgo Bureau are different from other branches. While not everyone here may be good, they won't be completely bad either. I'm asking you to check his soul state primarily because I'm worried about the people behind him. Who's behind him? He has some connection with the Aquarius director. The red-haired director explained. Tom was once an official in the Ministry of Finance. Because the king consecutively ousted 3 ministers of finance, the ministry was thrown into chaos for quite a while. Then he, at that time urgently needed a large sum of money, so he did some unscrupulous things, losing the kingdom's reserve funds. After joining the Purification Bureau in desperation, the Aquarius director seemed to discover some kind of potential in him, helping him create an anomalous object almost tailor-made for him. Although the Aquarius director's identity is confidential and they've hardly interacted directly, it's better to be cautious. Understood. Nodding to remember the task, Leon quickly shifted the topic back and tentatively asked, Director, about the demon's heart confiscated from the Ryan family. It's already been sent to the headquarters. Just wait for the inspection. The red-haired director frowned at the words, recalling the Bureau's plummeting performance rankings, and took a bitter gulp of tea, speaking irritably, Don't worry yourself over it. Once the Bureau finishes the investigation and proves you're fine, what's yours will be yours. With me covering for you, others can't take it away. Oh well, that's good then. Good, my ass. Seeing the seemingly pleased Leon, the red-haired director grew furious. I asked you to do an investigation task. Investigation? After you identified a suspicious target, why didn't you come back and call for reinforcements? Instead, you directly engaged him. Your clothes in the photo were soaked with blood. Is this what you learned from Emma? Let alone failing to stop that thing, letting it cause numerous extra casualties, almost completely destroying a major noble. Do you know? The evaluation for your task this time is absolutely the lowest in the Bureau. The absolute lowest. Just barely better than a failed mission by a tiny bit. Asterisk only slightly better than failure. Isn't that still a success? Asterisk although the Bureau's evaluation might be low, as long as he completed the investigation into Yang Xian, he'd have the Devil's Badge and Holy Spirit Badge added to his collection. While at it, he also got rid of a whole bunch of rotten scumbags. So, by his own standards, this mission was a resounding success. But he still had to hold back. Absolutely had to hold back. The director was obviously quite upset right now, and it wouldn't be a good idea to show too much happiness and risk getting into trouble with him. I was reckless. To avoid the window to the soul from exposing his true thoughts, Leon quickly lowered his head and dejectedly self-reflected. After completing the basic investigation and narrowing down the targets to those 5 individuals, I should have returned to the Bureau immediately to request support. I shouldn't have gone off to investigate Bobby Lane on my own. Originally, I thought that even if I was discovered accidentally, relying on the Holy Spirit pendant and witch's broom, escaping wouldn't be a problem. But his compatibility with that heart was so high that not only was flying prohibited, but the entire manor was sealed off. I really had no choice. Asterisk you absolutely had a choice. You were at least 90% doing it on purpose. Asterisk remembering Leon's busybody nature, the red-haired director couldn't help but glare at him, contemplating the possibility that this little troublemaker did it deliberately. Leon was usually very cautious. Even in the Purification Bureau, he would unhesitatingly run away at the slightest sign of anything out of the ordinary. This time he didn't come back to call for reinforcements but instead took the risk of confronting the target. He likely discovered a bunch of dirty deeds the Ryan family had been up to during his investigation, then lost control of his anger and deliberately approached Bobby Lane early to resolve him personally. But Bobby Lane's compatibility with the demon's heart was indeed astonishing. Faced with this low-probability event, Leon's original plan to just take him down was shattered, and he ended up being trapped and unable to leave, which eventually led to the Ryan Blood Night. As for the over 200 people who died, the files show they were mostly individuals starting at death row, perfectly fitting the group he loathed and even hated. He probably wasn't unable to save them, He simply didn't intend to save them. The kid has turned bad. Watching Leon dejectedly admit his mistake, but whose muscles and posture were so relaxed, showing no real sincerity in his confession, the red-haired director ground his teeth in frustration. This little troublemaker had been with the Purification Bureau for just a month and had already learned to repeatedly brush against the rules' limits to satisfy his excessive sense of justice without actually making mistakes. Damn. Who the hell did he learn this from? Without any sense of having led the rookie astray, the red-haired director, after roughly deducing the truth of that night, glared once more at the pretending Leon but ultimately couldn't bring himself to say anything. After all, although this little troublemaker was infuriating, he truly was an excellent subordinate, hardworking with impressive talent, diligent with a great attitude. Besides the excess of justice, compared to the pile of eccentric problem makers in the Bureau, he was already the least problematic. And those who died this time, you couldn't say they deserved it, but they certainly were unspeakably evil. Even hanging each one could be considered a bargain for them. If he were in Leon's place, he might also have been too late for rescuing. So he'd still have to cover for him a bit this time, to avoid any real trouble coming out of Bureau investigations. Sigh. There's no such thing as a perfect employee. Tolerate. After silently reciting, "It was me who recruited him" several times, the red-haired director comforted himself and let out a long breath. Then he viciously opened a drawer, took out some task orders, slapped them on the table, and looked at Leon with ill intent, saying, "All right, stop reflecting. Emma helped you with quite a bit while you were out, but there's still some left. Now that you're discharged from the hospital, catch up, you little troublemaker, making decisions without consulting me. I'll work you to the bone." Okay. Hearing there were new tasks to do, Leon felt his spirits lift, strength and confidence surging simultaneously, as he eagerly took the task orders to look through. He now had 12 badges but only 5 slots, and one was locked by materialism. Really not enough. The only way to expand the number of slots was to acquire more anomalous objects. These tasks fit right into what he needed. In Pov County, a large number of goats had gone missing. 6 herdsmen went looking in the mountains and vanished for 3 days, only to turn up 800 kilometers away in a brothel, claiming they didn't know how they got there. Under Master Wild's Morning Star Troop, although performances had been ongoing, no one seemed to have touched the food sent into the theater, suspected of a special case occurring. An arsonist had appeared in Lowther Arcade. Witnesses saw him carrying numerous fire-starting tools, walking through several streets and alleys in the wealthy district at night. Witnesses needed to be contacted to trace his whereabouts. After browsing through the task orders for a while, Leon couldn't help but furrow his brow. Why are these all investigation tasks again? And they don't even seem to have much to do with anomalous objects. Especially those so-called herdsmen. They found receipts and tickets for selling goats and claimed they were kidnapped to the brothel. What's there to investigate? The remaining 2 situations were just as absurd. If I were to guess, the truth of these 3 matters is probably like this. One group denied dirty deeds despite crossing borders, another was a superior troop not accepting free food, and the third was likely rebel arsonists trying to cause chaos. What anomalies could be found here? With a flourish, Leon moved the 3 task orders to the back, deciding not to rush to deal with the first 2 and tackle the arsonist first. He then looked down at the last task order in his hand. To go to the Rose Manor of the Marcini family, rescue the only daughter of the Charles department store owner who was kidnapped? Marcini. Weren't they the family that colluded with the Scales Gold sect, causing the Holy Spirit descent incident? Speaking of which, to continue with my practitioner badge, it seems I'll have to start with the Scales Gold sect, just the right chance to probe into their situation. I'll do this one first. Having finally found a task suitable for himself, Leon's furrowed brow slightly relaxed as he signed his name on the task order and handed it back. Going to Rose Manor to save someone. Sounds good. Seeing the task order Leon handed back, the red-haired director nodded in agreement. Leon getting released so quickly was also thanks to the owner of Charles department store, so having him handle the matter seemed fitting. However, just as the red-haired director was about to sign his name, completing the task assignment, he unexpectedly noticed Leon's eager expression. Marcini. Ryan. Marcini. Ryan. Another noble family up to no good. This little troublemaker better not be planning something big again. Don't rush the task. Quickly halting his signature, the red-haired director warily watched Leon and said, "Walk me through how you plan to execute this task." "Huh." Slightly stunned by the red-haired director's attitude, Leon thought for a moment and responded, "Since it's a rescue, I'll probably opt to infiltrate at night, first investigate the situation in the Marcini family, and then create a Marcini blood night." "Huh? You're switching it to daytime." Fearing that Leon might launch into something big again out of excitement mid-investigation, the uncertain red-haired director quickly stopped him. "Besides, you won't need to investigate. The hostage's location has been found by the Bureau. Go to the Chief Jerry's office on the first floor and let his friends take you there." "Has the Bureau already found the hostage's location?" Hearing the red-haired director's words, Leon couldn't help but be slightly stunned and then asked somewhat unwillingly, "Director, back then, the Holy Spirit from the Scales Gold sect was brought in by the Marseilles family. Their relationship with the Scales Gold sect is quite close. It's such a rare opportunity. Should we just—" "Stop. You just stop right there." Seeing that Leon was actually harboring ulterior motives, the red-haired director couldn't help but shudder abruptly. He crossed his hands firmly in an emphatic stop gesture. "This time, just focus on rescuing the people. Don't get involved in anything else. Especially with those people from the Marseilles family, the less contact you have with them, the better." After making his request to Leon, the red-haired director reminded him with a headache, "Do you really think the affairs of the Ryan family are over just like that? Right now, forget about the post-event observation period. You haven't even entered the review period yet. The investigators from the main bureau will be arriving in the next few days. If, by any chance, after you come into contact with the Marseilles family, something happens to someone in their family, even if it's just someone choking to death on a drink, the intensity of the scrutiny you'll face will be heightened once more." After experiencing the powerful effects of the gold level, "I am the demon," Leon naturally grew more eager for the Holy Spirit series badge effects, which were quite similar to those of the Demon series. But just as the director had said, the suspicions on him hadn't been completely cleared. He needed to tread carefully for now to avoid attracting the investigator's suspicion and unnecessary trouble. Anyway, the review was expected to end in about a week. The Scales Gold sect wouldn't collapse anytime soon, nor could the Marseilles family go anywhere. At worst, he could wait another week. "I will be cautious." Having heard the red-haired director's advice and promised not to act recklessly, Leon, holding the task order, was just about to leave when he suddenly seemed to remember something. He hesitated at first, then spoke somewhat bashfully, "Director, can I take a leave next week?" Although he had only been employed for just over a month, Leon had already taken more time off than he'd spent on the job. And after botching the last assignment and being absent for more than a week, he was barely back for an hour before asking for leave again. Even Leon himself felt a bit guilty about speaking up. However, when it came to his easily getting leave trait, the red-haired director seemed quite accommodating, directly pulling out a notebook and pen from a drawer and saying casually, Sure. Your injuries haven't fully healed yet, and you haven't been home much during the investigation these days. It's normal to ask for leave. How long do you need?" "Well, I'm not really sure either." Leon hesitated for a moment before asking in return, "How long does a typical noble succession ritual take?" "Do you know? A noble succession ritual?" The red-haired director pondered it and replied, "About 1 to 4 days, I suppose. For titles below that of Earl, most properties are limited with little real power, so it usually doesn't take long. A banquet to entertain guests and it's finished. It can be wrapped up in half a day." As for higher titles, those are generally held by large families. Changes in their titles can affect many things. The royal family might even send an envoy to witness, plus there are internal presentations of family history, transfer of ownership, clan elder meetings, and other matters. It probably takes at least 3 to 4 days. Was it really that complicated? Upon hearing this, Leon couldn't help but furrow his brow. If all the relatives, friends, and guests are dismissed, with just simple reporting to the royal family, and most key family members are dead, how short could it be? Then it might only take a day. But what major noble family would do that? With some surprise, the red-haired director blinked his eyes, and then looked up with an expression of puzzlement. And why do you even ask? Are you taking a leave to attend some big noble ceremony? You could say so. Scratching his head awkwardly, Leon, who hadn't figured out how to explain the situation yet, tried to explain as tactfully as possible. Director, do you remember the excuse I used when I was investigating Yang Xian? Sure. Recognizing kin with the Ryan family. What's up? Well, nothing much. Just that I succeeded in recognizing kin, and in a very, very successful way too. Clenching his fists slightly in hesitation, Leon looked at the red-haired director's face full of incomprehension and said with a rather helpless expression, "Let me put it this way. I am now the officially recognized 29th Duke of Lionheart. My succession ritual is set for next Tuesday." Shock. The newbie who just got his tenure after a month in the office asked for leave because he's actually going to inherit a dukedom's assets? And even more critical, the original first successor was killed by Leon himself. Could it be that he did this to inherit the title? But that can't be right. Leon shouldn't be that kind of person, and the Ryan family is in shambles because he didn't rescue them in time, leading to the death of many key members. They're on the brink of collapse. Who would first destroy the Ryan family and then inherit an empty shell of a title? But how do you end up acknowledging kin and becoming a duke? Faced with this sudden twist of fate, even the well-versed red-haired director couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock, and was at a loss for words for quite a while. After a brief pause, regaining his composure from the shocking news, the red-haired director said with a rather peculiar expression, "You're not joking with me, right?" "I'm really not joking with you. I'm genuinely going to inherit a title." After briefly explaining what he knew about the situation, Leon said helplessly, "I'm truly not interested in this title from the Ryan family, but no matter how I refused, it didn't work. They just went ahead and submitted my name. They were worried that I wouldn't cooperate, so they even drugged my hospital meals with sedatives and had over 20 guards watching outside my hospital room. I only managed to knock them down and escape when I was slightly better." "Well, no wonder you came back so quickly. It turns out you weren't released due to old Charles' intervention. You simply broke out after inheriting the title." Clicking his tongue with a somewhat speechless look, the red-haired director said with a complex expression, "Why didn't you mention something this important sooner? I wanted to tell you earlier, but when I first came back, before I could say anything, you kept asking about what happened during Ryan's Blood Night. After I explained, Senior Tom came in. Then you had me check Senior Tom and scolded me for taking the risk of approaching Bobby Lyon, and then you gave me an assignment. I never had the chance to speak." "Well, it seems that's indeed what happened." Recalling the previous situation and realizing it was indeed the case, the red-haired director couldn't help but open his mouth, before asking very perplexed, "Then, since you escaped, why are you asking for leave to attend the succession ritual? Also, what do you really think about being a duke? I mentioned just now that I'm truly not interested in the title. The reason for asking you for leave is that I feel it's only at the succession ritual that I will have the chance to completely rid myself of this hassle." After a slight hesitation, Leon said, "Director, tell me, if I were to announce at the succession ritual that in my capacity as duke, I donate all of the Ryan family's assets to the royal family, what would happen? To donate the Ryan family's entire estate to the royal family?" Hearing Leon's words, the red-haired director sat up a bit in surprise. Even though the Ryan family was already on the brink of collapse and would soon have most of its assets taken by various factions, leaving only an empty shell, even this shell would be enough for an ordinary person to live a lavish life for a lifetime. Why would he think of donating it all? Because the salary from the Purification Bureau was already enough for me to spend, and can even allow our family to live quite comfortably. Although inheriting the Duke's title would bring even more wealth, it would also drag me into endless troubles, completely disrupting Anna's life. In comparison, I think it's better as it is now. After briefly explaining his reasons, Leon thought for a moment and added, "Of course, I also have the intention of avoiding suspicion this way. After all, if I were to inherit the Duke of Lionheart's title, I would become the biggest beneficiary of the Ryan Blood Knight. The investigators sent by the Bureau might overthink it, so it's better to force them to quickly find someone else for the dukedom and get rid of this burden as soon as possible." "So a whole Duke family's wealth was just a heavy burden to you?" Staring into Leon's eyes and confirming he was speaking sincerely, the red-haired director slightly raised her eyebrows, then glanced at the toad pendant on Leon's chest. It made sense. If he had a strong desire for wealth, he probably wouldn't be able to resist this Holy Spirit with the authority over wealth. So, making such a choice wasn't hard to understand. Yet, why did you choose to donate to the royal family? The red-haired director thought for a moment and then seriously reminded him, "If your goal was simply to pressure them, getting those people to pick someone else for the dukedom, I wouldn't recommend donating to the royal family because they might not accept it. After all, it would look way too much like seizing property. The old nobility is not weak either, and if not handled properly, could lead to a massive backlash, which is definitely a big problem for the royal family. Moreover, even if you didn't donate to them, given the royal family's current momentum, they might still manage to grab 30 to 40% of the wealth. If they handle it well, there's even a chance for 50%. They might not want to take this risk, and the possibility of being directly rejected is not small." Could it develop like this? Hearing the red-haired director's words, Leon was slightly stunned and then was glad he hadn't rushed into action but sought her advice first. Otherwise, he would be in a tough spot if the royal family really refused the donation. Fully realizing the gap between himself and the director in this regard, the always modest and eager to learn Leon immediately lowered his stance and proactively asked for guidance. "So in your opinion, what would be the best course of action?" "Simple." Snapping her fingers crisply, the red-haired director smirked and said, "For such an important dukedom ritual, the princess would undoubtedly be present. You could directly use the entire Ryan family as a dowry and propose to her on the spot." "What?" "Trust me, this is absolutely the best approach." Seeing Leon's jaw drop at her plan, the red-haired director, getting her own back for a previous shock, felt quite pleased and said with a smile, "Your ultimate goal is simply to force them to pick someone else for the dukedom. Am I right? In those people's eyes now, you and the entire Ryan family are like fish on a chopping board, unable to escape being carved up regardless of how you might struggle. So, no matter how ridiculously or absurdly you act as a duke, it would have no impact on the result. Even if you donated the Ryan family, it wouldn't really matter. Anyway, you can only donate the wealth of the Ryan family, and the more important upper house seat and influence in the military and Department of Road Administration are not something you can donate. These core elements can only be taken by other noble in-laws. But if you used the entire Ryan family as a dowry to propose to the princess, then the situation would be completely different. With Leon's bewildered expression, the red-haired director declared confidently, "If you actually succeeded in your proposal, the princess could swallow the Ryan family's wealth and the upper house seat whole, and then rightfully occupy the Ryan family's positions in the military and Department of Road Administration, fully injecting her influence. In this way, the number of departments the royal family could basically control would have reached 9. Coupled with other departments they couldn't fully control but still wield some influence over, more than half of the kingdom's administrative departments would be under the princess's influence. Plus, with the Ryan family's vice-chair seat in the upper house, the royal faction would have a presence in both houses of parliament, and even if the old nobility and parliament united, they'd barely be stronger by 20 to 30%. If you then factor out the infighting and plots when they join forces, the princess faction and non-princess faction would essentially be 50-50. The reform measures she had always been thoroughly blocked from implementing would have a chance to be forcibly pushed through, striking a heavy blow to the entire old nobility tier. Once they figured this out, they might get the urge to want you dead on the spot, let alone having someone else take the dukedom. Watching Leon go from complete shock to astonishment, and finally to silent reflection, the red-haired director, satisfied with indulging her quirky sense of humor, summed up with a smile, "If you do as I suggest, the worst outcome would be successfully shedding the Duke identity, and in the best result you might even marry the princess and directly become a prince. Little Leon, how's the idea I gave you?" The idea was good, but if only you wouldn't mess with me in the process. By this point, Leon had realized his director's penchant for pranks had flared up again, and this proposal was clearly just her joking around with him. "Thank you for the reminder, director." Marking down this ultimate trick for losing the Duke identity as soon as he used it, Leon said with a darkened face, "But I suppose it isn't necessary to really propose to the princess, right? As long as I mention my intention to propose, they should drive me off the Duke's seat. That could work too, but aren't you even slightly considering it?" The red-haired director smiled. "Judging by the princess's approach, she'd absolutely accept upon hearing your proposal terms. She is reputed to be the most beautiful woman in the entire capital city. Don't you have even the slightest?"
No.
Seeing the director had entered a nonsensical mode, Leon, having already gotten a solution to his problem, naturally didn't want to stick around and be further teased, so he sternly left the director's office. "With the backlog of work from the past few days, I'd better get busy if there's nothing else." Off you go then." Watching Leon leave with a smile, the red-haired director, now in a much better mood, picked up a stack of documents and continued to work. However, when the sun started to set slightly, she suddenly exclaimed as if annoyed, opened a drawer, and took out a family photo tied with hair. She had first been busy with official business, then caught up in seeking amusement, and forgot to return the anomalous object Jerry had stolen from Leon. Not knowing that his sister's family portrait was in the hands of the bureau chief, Leon, who had already absent without leave for several days, left the chief's office and headed towards the end of the hallway on the first floor, identifying the nameplates on the doors along the way. "Harry, Spike, Tom, Jerry. Looks like this is the one." After confirming he didn't find the wrong office by checking the nameplate that read, "Jerry Baker, Level 2 Crisis Handler," Leon was about to knock on the door when he suddenly felt an unsettling sensation spreading through his body, as if he was standing on a high platform, being watched by countless pairs of eyes. Squeak! When Leon suddenly turned his head to look over, the rats in the shadows were frightened, squealing and running away, while a small troop of ants that had sneakily crawled to his feet scurried away as if they had encountered an anteater, and a pair of flies resting on the corridor overhead flew to a distant corner even before Leon's gaze landed on them. So, were these his friends? Watching these snakes, insects, rats, and ants scurrying away rapidly, feeling those glances cast upon him, Leon blinked thoughtfully, starting to make some guesses about Jerry's ability. Just then, from behind the window glass of the office in front of him, a golden retriever suddenly appeared. After curiously looking at Leon through the glass, the dog's head quickly retracted, and the door in front of Leon swung open as a short man hastily emerged from the office. "You finally came back." Before Leon could open his mouth, the short man grabbed him, pulling him into the office with a friendly expression, eagerly chatting him up. "Haha, actually, I had some spare time when you were out on your mission and thought about lending you a hand. But the chief said it was just an investigation task and nothing would happen, so he didn't send me. I didn't expect it to get delayed for so many days. Oh, by the way, did the chief mention my thing to you? I'm counting on you for the next part. And no matter the outcome, I assure you the compensation will satisfy you." "Oh?" Looking at Leon's puzzled expression, the short man's face slightly froze. "The chief didn't tell you?" "No." Leon responded, somewhat confused, The chief assigned me several tasks, one of which is to go to Rose Manor to rescue someone, and I need your help to guide the way, but she didn't mention anything else. It's okay. If she didn't say it, I can tell you myself. Cursing his unreliable chief under his breath, the short man led Leon to the sofa in the office, patted the glass board on the table, snapped his tongue quickly against the roof of his mouth, creating a click-click sound. Woof! With a dog's bark, the golden retriever that had looked at Leon through the window appeared under the glass board of the coffee table, or inside the glass. After scrutinizing the surprised Leon, the dog, weighing about 30 kilograms, used its nose to nudge the short man's hand through the glass, even licking him once. I'm not here to play with you. I need something. With a shake of his wet hand, the short man looked at Leon, then rubbed his face and throat, and strangely started barking like a dog, occasionally mixing in some howls and grunts. Under Leon's astonished gaze, the golden retriever inside the glass nodded, seemingly understanding the dog language of the short man, stood up, and walked to the side of the glass board, disappearing from view. A few seconds later, it returned to the scene, dragging a sturdy-looking mesh bag, laboriously walking towards the two men, then turning to fling it out with force. Clatter, bang! With the sound of hard objects hitting the glass, a whole bag of items was actually tossed out of the mirror by it, clattering onto the tabletop. Blood-stained dance shoes, strangely fishy-smelling dried fish, a notebook with an eye on its cover, several spinning odd coins, a palm-sized model bed bound with chains, a Christmas hat riddled with holes. There seemed to be at least 30 to 50 items. Staring dumbfoundedly at this heap of bizarre objects, Leon's heart skipped a beat, and then he said incredulously, "Are these anomalous objects?" "Pretty much," the short man said with a greedy smile, rubbing his hands together eagerly. "Anyway, you'll find out sooner or later, so I won't hide it from you. I have a bit of a, kleptomania, so the first anomalous object I got was related to stealing, and this pile is what I've accumulated over the years. Don't worry, I'm a thief, but I have principles. I only steal from outsiders, not from acquaintances. Since you've joined our 6th Bureau, you're part of us now, so I definitely wouldn't really steal from you." Not really steal from me, meaning he might fake steal when unable to resist? Noting this senior's little quirk, Leon added extra caution and tentatively said, "So, you want me to help because you know I have the ability to forcibly obtain intelligence about anomalous objects?" "Exactly." Seeing Leon's unresistant look, the short man was overjoyed, promising with excitement, "Over the years, I've gotten quite a few good things, but anomalous objects aren't like other items. Without knowing their effects and costs, I'm truly afraid to mess with them, so I can only pile them up here. I have more anomalous objects than Emma, yet I'm stuck not moving up from level 2. When I learned about your ability from the chief a few days ago, I was practically over the moon. If you could help me identify these objects and make more of them usable, that would be a huge help. You can choose any of the anomalous objects I can't use as your own. Help you identify some items, and then I can choose one freely?" Hearing this NPC senior issuing a task, Leon raised his eyebrows slightly, opened the badge panel for a look, and sure enough, the connected party badge was flashing continually. Bronze level hidden badge connected party activated. You have received resource support from within the organization. Complete the provider's conditions to receive said resource. Asterisk, so this is the effect of the hidden badge connected party activating before going to the Ryan family. As expected of a hidden badge, just feeling a few items can grant an anomalous object. This exchange really is quite worthwhile. Asterisk. Shutting off the badge panel, Leon didn't stand on ceremony. Instead, he took out some paper and a pen he carried with him, nodding with a smile. "Then I thank you for your generosity, senior. Name: Joyous Dance Shoes, Doll Heart. Appearance: a pair of women's dance shoes stained with a substantial amount of blood, styled after a popular design from 50 years ago. They gained immense popularity in the entire Belray County due to their association with a well-known dancer. Ability: graceful dance moves, infectious charm. Cost: double stamina consumption, and cannot be voluntarily removed before losing the ability to move. File: these shoes were a favorite of a renowned dancer in Belray County. She wore them to perform a record-breaking 23-spin dance, captivating nearly 6,000 spectators at a grand show. However, after the performance, she had to withdraw from her beloved stage due to a tendon tear. Yet, after years of silence, when she returned, she had regained the ability to dance. This time, though, her dance was no longer a solo act. It made everyone dance along with her, unable to stop even when they fainted, forcing them to continue like puppets. Evaluation: upon wearing them, you become the ultimate dancer. Everyone who witnesses your dance will join in, dancing irresistibly until your stamina is depleted or until your muscles are completely torn. Contamination value: 2.5. Name: dehydrated mermaid jerky. Transform: element. Appearance: a dehydrated and sun-dried dugong corpse. Ability: transform into a mermaid, brief water control. Cost: unable to drink water for 48 hours. File: Ariel, a Level 3 crisis handler from the Liber Division of the Purification Bureau male. Once used this anomalous object to transform into a female mermaid. He infiltrated the sea race, attempting to gather intelligence under the guise of a mermaid, but unexpectedly caught the eye of the mermaid prince, ending up. Evaluation: a highly practical ability. Just one lick turns you into a member of the sea race for 48 hours. Unfortunately, the taste is quite nauseating, akin to licking a sweaty foot coated in stinky tofu juice. Contamination value: 1.1. Name: monster under the bed, corruption. Fright. Appearance: a demon's hand that extends from beneath the bed's shadow at night. Its size and number vary with the size of the bed frame. Ability: physical harm, spreading fear. Cost: post-use results in a night of nightmares, forcing you to confront your inner fears. File: a special anomalous object created by the Bai Yi sect. It had caused considerable trouble for the Purification Bureau's Little Dog Division until Level 2 crisis handler Jerry Baker from the Virgo Division was temporarily assigned. He employed 3 million white ants to devour all the surrounding bed boards. Only then. Evaluation: possesses both physical and mental harm capabilities, making it a rather decent anomalous object. However, forming combat power requires a sufficiently large bed board, making it difficult to carry, and it can only be activated late at night, posing significant limitations. Contamination value: 8.7. After spending nearly an hour investigating and documenting all the anomalous objects on the table, Leon, whose wrist was sore from writing, put down the pen, flexed his wrist, and sighed. This Jerry guy's kleptomania seemed quite severe, yet he truly had some skills. The final sentence in these anomalous object files always read the same: stolen after brief contact with Virgo Division Level 2 crisis handler Jerry Baker. The identities of these previous owners were quite varied. From ordinary people who lost control after an awakening to the high priest of an underground sect, a royal family member of another kingdom, to key employees of other divisions, and even the director of the 12 Zodiac bureaus, there seemed to be nothing he wouldn't dare to steal. Yet, the overall quality of these items was just moderate. The anomalous object with the highest contamination value barely exceeded 12 points, only slightly better than 1/7 of the goat mix, and their usage cost was considerable, incomparable to something like the Holy Spirit pendant. Wonderful! Haha! This really is... Oh, I must thank you properly. Unaware of Leon's thoughts, the short man was leafing through a stack of appraisal reports with a look of joy, feeling incredibly lucky. His level had nearly reached that of a first-level disaster handler, although slightly lacking in Leon value. Additionally, the two strongest anomalous objects were for theft and beast control, lacking in combat effectiveness and methods. This was why he couldn't pass the rating for a first-level disaster handler no matter what. With these anomalous objects appraised, he could choose some suitable ones to fill in his shortcomings, and with a little effort to augment his Leon value, He could soon meet the requirements for a first-level disaster handler. This one, and this one I need to keep. They're really perfect for me. Selecting 3 reports from the stack, he carefully tucked them away. The short man, grinning from ear to ear, grabbed Leon's hand and shoved the remaining reports into his hand, waving generously. The rest are yours to choose from. Take whatever catches your eye. If one isn't enough, feel free to take another one. Then I won't be polite. Smiling and nodding, Leon accepted the appraisal reports and began flipping through them, noticing that Jerry had not been stingy. Almost all the high contamination value anomalous objects remained, except for one with a contamination value of 10 that had been selected. However, the things Jerry offered for appraisal either had high costs and were troublesome to use or could be replaced by the Holy Spirit pendant, with some overlap in functionality. And with my meager 2.6 contamination value, I could only fully activate 2 anomalous objects with a 1.3 contamination value each, or push one anomalous object to a 2.6 contamination value level. I couldn't even make full use of the revived black goat, feeling that these current anomalous objects alone were enough to keep me busy. Plus, my physical strength isn't strong enough, I can't even carry the issued box from the division, and the few useful items among this pile of anomalous objects are quite large, so taking them would just leave them collecting dust in the office. Wait. At this point, Leon glanced at the glass panel on the table, then set down the stack of appraisal reports in his hand, and tentatively asked, Jerry, the object inside the glass panel earlier, is that also an anomalous object? Hearing Leon's question, the short man paused, then nodded after some thought. I suppose it counts. 3 years ago, there was a mirror world invasion at the junction of the Libra division and our division's jurisdiction. Lisa was a mirror world creature I took in during that mission. Are you interested in her? I'm kind of interested. Leon nodded somewhat awkwardly. I've only recently joined the Bureau with a contamination value of just over 2, and activating anomalous objects still often consumed physical strength. The issued box from the Bureau wasn't suitable for me, and I happened to be lacking a helper like her to carry things, remembering that the other party might be an archdruid. Leon quickly added, Of course, I don't necessarily have to have her, just that her ability seems suitable. If it's inconvenient, something else would work too. Well, it is a bit inconvenient. Hearing Leon's response, the short man breathed a sigh of relief and then explained, Lisa is more of a friend than an anomalous object of mine, so I can't use her for trading, but other mirror dogs are possible. After saying this, he knocked on the glass panel again, summoning the golden retriever named Lisa, then rubbed his throat and barked back and forth with her. Following a series of seemingly incomprehensible exchanges, the golden retriever in the glass panel extended her head beyond the screen range, making a fetching motion. Then, a dazed little puppy was tossed out from the glass panel. Holy crap! Is this Lady Lisa a bit too rough on kids? Just before the puppy hit the table, Leon caught it in his arms and checked it over, a string of question marks popping into his mind. No wonder Lady Lisa was a golden retriever, but the puppy he held, with its blue eyes, was a typical black and white, with 2 triangular ears stubbornly erect, and 3 white dots on its brow forming a chubby fire character. This was obviously a husky. Wait a minute. As he was about to make a judgment, Leon noticed some sparse golden fur on the puppy's head, likely belonging to a human scalp, towards the back of the dog's skull, and its color matched Lady Lisa's perfectly. After exchanging a glance with the young Ha staring at him stubbornly from his arms, Leon looked at the big golden retriever in the glass panel with confusion, then turned his head towards Senior Jerry beside him. Is Lady Lisa's partner possibly a husky? No, Lisa's husband is the same breed as her, also golden. Looking at the young Ha in Leon's hands, the short man sighed helplessly. This is the child of Lisa's husband and his mistress. Damn mistress. So the male golden retriever cheated with a female husky and brought the kid back home for the female golden to raise? Ah, you wouldn't know. The situation at their place is quite complicated. The short man shook his head as he glanced at Leon's dumbfounded face. Lisa's husband. Well, isn't a good guy. When the mirror world invaded 3 years ago and he sensed something was amiss, he took off early with his mistress, leaving a whole litter of kids behind. Lisa, having no kids of her own and hearing the little guys crying pitifully, adopted her husband's mistress's child. Though she could reluctantly raise the other kids as her own for the sake of her husband, this little guy, apart from that tuft of golden hair on his head, looked just like his biological mother, and every time Lisa saw him she would remember her husband's mistress. Although Lisa had a soft heart and continued to raise this little guy, she couldn't help feeling blocked inside, secretly crying whenever she saw him for the first 2 years. So it's actually a good thing for you to take him away. I see now. With a somewhat stiff expression after hearing this dog blood drama, Leon looked at the golden retriever with its back turned in the glass panel, its back twitching, and didn't know what else to say but to stroke the small golden tuft on Young Ha's head. Name: Mirror Dog Passage. Appearance: a juvenile husky with sparse golden fur on its head. Ability: enter and exit the mirror world. Cost: 3 to 4 small bowls of dog food per day, approximately 80 to 120 grams each time, while ensuring certain exercise, but its food intake will increase with age. File: a mirror world creature, 3 years and 6 months old. Presented to Level 3 Incident Handler Leon Lane by Level 2 Crisis Handler Jerry Baker at the Virgin Branch of the Purification Bureau. Evaluation: a rare and fascinating creature able to travel freely between 2 worlds, with intelligence slightly higher than ordinary dogs and an incredibly long lifespan of its own. Its growth and aging rate is 1/5 that of normal humans, reaching 25 times that of regular dogs. If well kept, it could outlive your 18th generation of descendants. Corrosion value: 0.1. It was quite easy to raise. Stroking the excellent-feeling golden tuft on Young Ha's head, Leon looked up at Senior Jerry with some reluctance and couldn't help but speak. I need a place to store a box. Isn't it a bit too small? Can it hold things? Don't worry, they store things by passage, not movement. So there's no need to physically move things in. As the short man spoke, he took out a small mirror from his pocket and gave a slight wave over the pile of anomalous objects on the table. Woof! With the familiar bark, anything on the table within the little mirror's sight disappeared as if erased with a rubber, and the reflection in the mirror showed another table, now filled with those items. See, that's how it works. After demonstrating the basic usage of the mirror dog, the short man returned to his desk, rummaged through a drawer underneath, and handed over an identical small mirror, then seriously cautioned. Also, they are not just storage tools, but very exceptional assistants and companions, because the definition of the mirror world is not just mirrors themselves. Anything that reflects an image is essentially an entrance to the mirror world. So don't be fooled by this little one, with the lowest Leon value almost. But if used well, its ability can be life-saving in critical moments. Like this. The short man spoke while kicking away the office carpet, revealing the cement floor below, then took a glass of water from the table and splashed most of it on the ground. After a few seconds, as the water on the ground stabilized into a relatively calm mirror, Lady Lisa's figure appeared in the puddle, subsequently fetching a knife and tossing it over. I was once ambushed by the Bai Yi sect, all my possessions taken, tied up and locked in a pitch-black dungeon, and they thought they'd hold me, but they didn't know I had Lisa. Pointing to the puddle on the ground, the short man said with lingering fear, those lunatics were actually very cautious, but during interrogation, I kept babbling nonsense and managed to ask for several glasses of water, then held in my urine for half a day to form a puddle on the ground, and with a pre-prepared emergency anomalous object to heal my injuries, I narrowly escaped. And besides saving your life in critical moments, it can also do this. Reaching into his pocket and retrieving a palm-sized metal object, the short man placed this heavy metal ball in Leon's palm, then snapped his fingers lightly. Woof! With a bark so close as if right next to him, Leon's vision blurred, and the metal ball vanished directly from his hand. Human eyes, in fact, also have reflections, and as long as the object you see isn't blocked, Lisa can take it away directly, and not only can she take things, but she can put them back again. Woof! Pointing to the small metal ball that reappeared with the bark, the short man warned solemnly. This thing in your hand is a whale oil bomb that I got from the military, with a blast effect extra enhanced by an anomalous object. Once activated, it could destroy an entire building, releasing a burning agent over 1,000 degrees Celsius, and after training that little guy can place it right in your enemy's face. Holy crap. No wonder you're a half first-level expert. Senior Emma's using a large sniper rifle already seems outrageous enough, but you throwing explosives like this is 10 times as unprincipled. From Leon's eyes, seeing the intense shock and admiration, the short man, eager to make friends with this appraisal master, let out a chuckle. Of course, forcibly taking or releasing larger items from such a small reflection is not ordinarily possible. Before you break through a Leon value of 10 points, it's probably not feasible, and that little guy will need to grow a bit more for you to do it currently. My purpose for telling you this is to encourage you to pay attention to that little guy. Don't just view him as a luggage box that doesn't need carrying. His ability is indeed quite remarkable, and it's a shame not to make good use of it. Oh, and in the future, when you're able to use the whale oil bomb, feel free to come here and find me. I'll gladly give you a couple for free, but for now, Hearing the puppies whimpering beside him and realizing that the whale oil bomb had suddenly disappeared from Leon's palm, the short man was utterly shocked. How did you do that? Do you have an anomalous object that can communicate with animals too?